Okay, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hi. Yeah, it's not even 5 o'clock yet, and Wick is live. What's going on? What are we doing here? Oh, man. Here, let me move my little nail clippers, right? Gotta keep myself groomed, right? Man, I had a show scheduled today, and I still want to do that show, and we are doing that show. It's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about DEI in science and how women are, if women are given preferential treatment. But I'm going live early because there's something else I want to talk about. Something that I've been that I'm actually I have mixed feelings on. I've complicated thoughts on. I don't know if my thoughts are. I'm doing some introspection here. So first, let me preface by saying that Asmongold released an apology video. If you guys saw yesterday's content, we talked about the controversy about his statement, what he said. He released an apology video a few hours ago where he goes through it and he talks about what he did, his statement, and we're going to watch some of that, okay? We're going to watch some of that. In fact, let's watch the first few minutes of it. Sans my input, so I don't prime the pump too much. And then we're going to talk about not only my feelings about it, right, my thoughts on it, but also the initial reaction that I've seen in the Twitter sphere, in the streaming sphere, etc. And keep in mind, these are initial reactions. These are initial things that I'm seeing. There's a lot to go through. But let me set this up. Let me get it up. Make sure you guys can see it. Oh, that angle is not good. Let me change it. Let me get a little smaller for y'all. Bloop. And we will watch at least a portion of this, okay? Because I think it's important. You can hear in his own words and make your own decisions before I prime the pump, so to speak. But Cernus, nice to see you. Blahiki Blah, also nice to see you. Welcome everyone in my stream. I can't check the YouTube chat right now because I have it in the same. Look, I need another monitor at some point, but here we are. Welcome to the stream. Let's, without further ado, listen to what he has to say.
Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you all about what my reason was for getting suspended on Twitch and also what my plans are going forward. I'm going to try and structure this video into two parts, where the first part is going to be me talking about the Twitch suspension, second part is going to be talking about myself. And the first thing I want to start off with is something that I know it might sound a little bit insincere because of how ridiculous this is, but I really mean it, and if you listen to the whole video, I hope you can see why. Everybody who's come and spoken out and talked to me and said stuff about me, aside from the, oh, you should kill yourself or something like that, I want to say that I really appreciate you. And I think this has been something that's a long time coming. And I actually think that this is something that not only I deserved, but it's also something that I needed. And I want to talk about what the reason for that is, but I want to start off and just make sure that that's actually very clear. So a couple of days ago, I made some comments about Palestine and also about Hamas and, some just general, basically opinions that were trivializing the genocide that's happening there. And I don't really want to, mince words or, try to, oh, I wasn't justifying or, promoting it. I said something about it that was disgusting. I said that I didn't care about innocent people getting killed by another force, by anything. And I think that that's a horrible, disgusting, mean-spirited thing to say.
Okay, so he's correct. It was gross. He shouldn't have said it. Yes. We're going to go through it more. I do like how he separated and segregated the people who actually approached him to talk to him about it versus the people who told him to just go kill himself, right? I think that's important to recognize and important to realize that there were some people who were genuinely hurt by his comments, who genuinely did not like what he has to say, and were genuinely upset, right? And then there were people who just want blood, okay? And we're going to get to that, right? But let's watch a little bit more, and then we'll talk about it. Cool? Cool.
And I don't necessarily think that it was really racist, really. But when I'm using language like Palestinians or like the people there, rather than what my real language was, I've always been very outspoken and very against religious extremism. And I still am. I think that any religion and any way of thinking that's going to cause you to put other people in like kind of positions below you as like, you know, like gay people, women, people with disabilities, anything like that, I think that that's a really bad position to have, and I really don't like that. And I think that my problem and my fault here was that I was making a criticism of religious extremism, and I made no effort. And I feel like almost, I've rewatched the clip, right, or a number of the clips, and it's like I've almost made an effort not to draw a distinction between the two things. I think that a lot of us here can easily say that we're against religious extremism, and I am. But whenever I categorize everybody in the area as this, like, group, then I'm the asshole. And
So Buck L says, this is your friend from yesterday, Wick? This is the guy we were talking about yesterday. I don't know him personally, to be clear. I've never talked to him personally. So is he my friend? No. He's someone I know of, and what he was going through touched on a lot of things that I had opinions on, so we talked about it. And this touches on a lot of things I have opinions on, so we're talking about it. I think he's absolutely correct here when he says he didn't make the effort to distinguish between, I wouldn't even call it religious extremists, right? Because it's not just religion at play here. But no, he's right in the sense that, yes, he absolutely should have been more able to distinguish between the people who were just living their fucking lives and the fucking Hamas types, right? Like, there's a huge difference between these two groups. However, like, here's also something we need to think about, and I want to talk about, is the idea of criticizing culture or criticizing aspects of a culture. I don't think it's wrong to point out that some cultural aspects or some aspects of cultures are worse than aspects of other cultures. For example, in Afghanistan, they don't allow women to read and write. In Iran, if you don't wear your hijab, if you're a woman and you don't wear your head scarf covering thing, hijab or whatever, correctly, they will beat you, sometimes to death. Those are bad, and those are worse, objectively, in my opinion, than the cultural norms in other countries regarding women. That's just true. So I think that it is no sin to say, hey, these parts of this culture are objectively worse and bad than this other culture. And we can make comparisons like that. However, he is correct. He made no distinctions, and he's where I think he crossed the line was that he said, and because you have this worse cultural aspects, I don't care if you die. That's the problem. Like I said yesterday, it was callous. I'm not here to defend it. But let's listen to a little bit more of the apology and then talk about it more. Cool?
And I was the asshole. I had a lot of you guys tell me that. And it's taken me, this is what's so crazy about it, is that I think this has been going on now for like 2 years. I think that I've been slowly devolving into the most mean-spirited, I don't really even know what the word is for it. Just like the most mean-spirited, rude, like nasty, like just callous, psychopathic version of myself. I think that I've been devolving into this. And a lot of my friends have told me this. My dad has told me this. He said, you've got to chill out. You've got to calm down. I've been like, oh, that old man doesn't know what he's talking about. And I've finally had some level of accountability for that. And thank God. I look back at some of the things that I've said and done over.
Hold on. What level of accountability has he had here? Getting a suspension for 14 days. He, I think, stepped away from his positions at OTK and some kind of PC like Starforge PC, I think it was. Some sponsorship he had, some company he had. Is that what we talk about when we talk about accountability here? Martin Cerny says also, what's up with the hoodie? You look like a dark political dwarf in the best way possible, mind you. Look, it's hoodie weather. You guys don't know, but the hoodie is my outfit for streaming when it's the weather, when the weather permits. Okay, so you guys don't know, but this is a blast from the past. Okay, I love my wizard hoodie. It's nice. It's comforting, right? Yeah. There's a lot to I don't want to watch the whole thing, right? It's 20 minutes, and unfortunately, I do have a show at 6 that I want to do, but I have a lot of thoughts on this whole process, on everything here. I have linked the apology video in full in my description, and I encourage you to go watch it in full, right? I encourage you to do that. But I wanted to talk about my thoughts here because they're complex. My initial reaction when I pulled this video up, right? When I first was linked this video and I pulled it up, my initial gut reaction, my gut impact was, this feels off, right? This feels off. It feels like there's a proverbial gun off stream pointed at this guy's head, right? It's like one of those hostage. Did you guys remember the John Cena apology video? Right? You guys remember that when he called Taiwan a country and then he was forced to apologize in Chinese for doing so because of the backlash? It felt like that. And to some extent it still does. But I've been really thinking about this, right? I've been really kind of introspecting here, and I wonder if I feel this way, not because of his sincerity or lack thereof or anything like that, but because I have had verbal scuffles with the same people, a lot of the same people who came after Asmongold, right? Because I haven't said anything near what he said, but I've said things that are denigrating to Hamas and to the parts of the legal system, legislative system, and yes, the culture, right, that I find to be inferior, that I find to be gross, that I find to be disgusting. I think it is disgusting. And I want to be very clear. It is any culture that forbids women from reading and writing is disgusting. Full stop. Do you disagree? If you disagree, I think you're a bad person. I think you're a worse person than I am. True. That doesn't mean I think that the people who live in that culture should be hurt or killed or anything like that. No, I think that they should change their culture and get a better one. That they should leave the parts of their culture that are bad in the dustbin of history, much like the West has done over time. Because we used to do terrible things in our culture, and we still do to some extent. There are portions of our culture which are terrible, and that we need to change them. And when we do, our future culture is going to be superior to our current culture. Women also can't own land in a lot of the Middle East. They can't own a business in a lot of the Middle East. If they don't dress a certain way, they are beaten to death. Yes, those aspects of that culture are inferior than the culture of the West. Yes, absolutely. And if we can't talk about that, if we can't say that without people coming at us, then we've lost the sauce, gang. Now again, this isn't what happened with Asmongold. Asmongold made cross the line. And he said, because they have those aspects of their culture, I think it's okay that they're getting genocided. Which is it's a far cry, right, from what I'm saying now, right? It's a different thing. But again, there are people who would say that any kind of comparison between cultures is racist, ethnocentric, insert buzzword here, right? They would absolutely say that. And no, Monsieur Balls, that doesn't mean we kill anyone. But that does mean that we can look at these two cultures and say, these are the aspects of the cultures. And in these ways, this culture is superior. And in these ways, this culture is superior. So I guess my question for you, dear chat, twofold. Do we think Asmongold is sincere here? One's for yes, two for no. Do we think he is actually sorry for what he said? Or do we think that he is caving in to pressure? Pressure from whether that be financial or social? Or is it a mix of both? What do we think? Again, my $2 for no. Okay, no to which one? Slong and Stew, but thank you for the $2. I perceive him as sincere from Naxalis. Yeah, right. It's really hard for me to know because I don't know him. And it's also, and this is the fucking frustrating thing of all of this, is there's always going to be a suspicion, and I think a reasonable suspicion, that this was done under duress. Because it was done under duress, right? Like, there was a proverbial gun to his head. Whether that's why he did it or not, I don't know. But it was there. Like, the way this has been handled, and this isn't a knock on Asmongold, not if he's sincere here, but it's a disservice to Asmongold, the way this was handled. Because now we can't know whether he's sincere or not. Because, again, it was done under duress. Slaventicus says, Sol Invictus 10 says, yeah, I think he's been sincere. I think he probably took a little too much Adderall that day and just reactively spat it off, which is what being content brain does to a mofo. Yeah, maybe. And look, there's a lot to his life, and I've seen other videos of him. To be clear, I don't really watch Asmongold. I've seen a total of 3 videos. 3 Asmongold videos. Only 2 in completion. I've seen this apology one. I see one where he talked about how, like, why he gave his life story, and I saw various clips of streams he's done on gaming and things like that. $5 from Slong and Stew. We should get you guys together. You dress like a wizard, and he sometimes plays ones in games. Imagine the collab. Yeah, maybe. Like I said, I'd love to talk to the guy. I tried to DM him on Twitter, but because I don't pay for Twitter, I can't. Yeah, that setting where only verified users can contact him. But I would have loved to kind of get his perspective on this. Because that's the only way I can ever... Hold on. That's the only way I will ever really know, right? Or at least begin to know whether or not this guy's sincere. Just a guy says the gun to his head is the social pressure, not the financial pressure. He's not used to big name streamers directly calling him out. Yeah, maybe. And again, I don't know what he values. Like, I don't know if he values those connections at all. Like, if he doesn't actually value these, if he doesn't give a shit when bigger names call him out, then we could say that, again, he's probably likely more sincere here because that wouldn't be as big of a pressure. I just don't know. I just don't know, gang. I know that's not a satisfying answer. But this is the state we are in, and it doesn't just apply to Asmongold. I'm talking about this broadly because I think it's a broad topic, because it applies to so much. We see this happen over and over again all the time, right? We can't know if what someone is saying is sincere or not because there is huge outside coercive pressure, duress. They are under duress. If you do not do this, we will take away your financials. We will socially ostracize you. We will make you a pariah. Conform or be exiled. And I think that's a real fucking problem. It's a real fucking problem. I don't know the truth of things or the truth of what people say anymore because I don't know if he's apologizing because he doesn't want to be a social pariah or if he's actually sorry about what he said. Yeah, I don't know. Like Bis D, I don't think that's what happened this time. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. But again, we saw the reactions, and I think I showed you some of the reactions that were directed at him. Of people like, again, immense hatred directed at this man. Henry Tepp says what Asmon values is his being himself, and he came off as an asshole. He didn't like it. That's why the video he made was highly reflective of his own actions. He doesn't give a shit about money. Easy to say, right? Sam Surya says, what's wrong with Asmongold's comment? Which one? Bis D says Hassan didn't condemn him. Got to give him credit for that. Yeah, maybe. Y does says Asmon W, fuck the haters. Fair enough. So let's see. Let's see how people are taking his apology online. Some of his haters, right? Some of the people who were critical of what he said. Let's take a gander. See what they have to say. What's this one say? Here, let me get it a little larger for you. Yeah, fuck Asmongold. This was done, again, not too long ago. Where can you see the time? At the bottom here. 3:56. So well after the apology video. She's quoting a Reddit post that he made about why he apologized, where he explains a little more. And then they show a clip of something he says in the Reddit stream. Again, just 22 minutes ago as the time of this post. So after the apologies video. Someone says, take a break. Us Chuds will be here waiting for you to make streaming great again. Then he replies, don't worry, I'll react to a DEI equals die gaming video first day back to stream. This is what this person is highlighting. And they don't care. What are some of the replies when I said, like, again, I replied to this saying, this is why people don't apologize, right? Because it's never enough. This Captain Gwendolyn guy, genocide apologia isn't stepping out a little, right? Again, if you think he's sincere, if you feel that Asmongold is sincere, right? That he really was sorry for what he said, that he did introspect, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I was an asshole. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said it. No, yeah, I do. Why does? I know that Captain Gwendolyn sometimes comes to my community. Yeah, I hope he hears this. There has to be an off-ramp. There has to be, if apologies are to matter, when they are done in good faith, they have to be accepted. If apologies are to matter, when they are done in good faith, you have to accept them. Now, you can judge whether or not this is good faith. That's up to you, right? And again, initially, I don't know, right? And that's my current stance is I don't know if this one's sincere. I don't know. But let's give some charity. Let's assume it is. Give some charity. Let's assume it is. Yes. Except if he apologizes, and he's sincere, what else would you like? Seriously, what else would you like him to do? The people who don't accept the apology, right? Who think that it wasn't enough, that him having Chud takes on gaming means that, they don't care what he says about this. It makes me wonder. It makes me wonder how much of the hate that was directed at him was for the comments, and how much of the hate that was directed at him used the comment as an excuse to hate on him, right? That no matter what he said or did, they were going to hate on him, right? Because they hate on him. It takes away from your critique. It does. It takes away from your critique. If you think what he said was wrong, if you think that, and if he apologizes for it, should be good. Boom. He sincerely apologized. All good in the hood, baby. But that's the reaction from, and there's others, right, that I could go through, but I won't. And for the sake of brevity, sake of time, if you aren't accepting this apology, it does lessen your critique. It makes me think, it makes the viewer think, it makes everyone looking at this think, oh, you weren't actually mad at him for this. You were just mad at him for other reasons that we're using this as an excuse to be mad at him. So if you don't like him, if you hate him for his gaming takes, just fucking say it. Just fucking say that. His comments about Palestinian people didn't fucking matter to you. You hated him before. You're going to hate him after. It doesn't matter. Not to you, anyway. Yeah, he could have great Palestinian takes, but you'd still hate him. You'd still hate the shit out of him. Why should he do anything for people who will not give an inch? Why should he do anything? This is my problem with these types of people, okay? This is my huge issue with the Mike from PAs of the world. Oh, speaking of that motherfucker, that couch puncher, okay? Speaking of that couch puncher, Mike from PA, looks like I won't be voting for Harris. This is him mere weeks ago. You live in New York City, your vote doesn't matter. If she picks Walz, I'll vote for her, and I live in a swing state, so my vote actually matters. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Why are we trusting anything these people say? They're fucking liars. Do you see it yet? Do you get it? Nothing you can do will ever be enough for these people. You can give them everything that they want. It does not matter. It doesn't. They're liars. They're liars. Why why pay any attention to them? Why give them the time of day? I hate it. I hate it so much. This is my biggest problem with the fucking Democrats, okay? You guys want to hear me rant about Democrats and how much I fucking hate Democrats? It's that they cave to these pieces of shit. Every fucking time. They cave to these pieces of shit. And these pieces of fucking shit are liars, not to be trusted. They need to be fucking oppressed. Okay? They need to be marginalized and oppressed because they're extremists. They're extremist liars who don't give a shit. We should not be platforming them. We should not be, and by platforming, I mean, we should not be giving them the time, like seats at the table. No, until you learn to act like an adult, you get to sit at the kiddie table. And we don't pay any fucking attention to you. No, I'm still a Democrat. This is just what I hate about Democrats, okay? Again, these people will say, well, if you do this, then we'll vote for you. And you'll do this. Nah. They won't. Why are we giving them anything? Don't trust them. They're not trustworthy. They're not good people. They're not someone we can appease or appeal to. They are not to be relied upon. They're not to be trusted. Henry Teb says, who the fuck is caving to Mike from PA? You talking about Ashley Furniture? There are, okay, here's the thing. The Democrats have to an extent. Not just this go round. Here's my thing, and I talked about this a couple days ago, but I'll talk about it again. One of the problems that we had in the kind of like the 2016 era. So in 2016, when Trump won, okay, Democrats panicked. This was a shock to them, and it legitimately shook them to the core, right? I know I was Democrat at the time. So they thought, well, damn, maybe we need to change how we operate. Maybe these people on the fringes, these people saying, listen to us, listen to us, listen to us, maybe we should. And they were given seats at the table of influence and power within the Democratic Party. They were given seats at the table in the at high positions, at high levels, and people who were already at high levels started giving them the time of day in a way they hadn't before. And we've seen the evolution of that, right? And how more and more and more of the kind of like the Democratic culture kind of caved to them. And we went more and more and more towards their ways of doing things and their policies, etc. This was a fucking mistake. This was a fucking mistake. And we're going to be paying for it for a while. But hopefully, my prayer is, right, that when Harris wins, because all these guys have, like the Mike PAs from the world, have shot their load, okay? They've staked their claim. They are saying, we're not going to vote for Kamala. We're not going to let Harris win, and you need us to win. That's why I pray to fucking God every day that Harris wins without these fuckers. So we can tell them, okay, we obviously don't need you. We can do it without you. And we can kind of revert a lot of the terrible, terrible decisions we've made on how we deal with people, how we treat others, how we look at politics in general. Yeah, I think that needs to happen. The worst case scenario for the Democratic Party is a Trump win, because that will, and this is my fear, that this will empower the Mike from PAs of the world, and the Democratic Party will just grow will just make the same mistake that they made back in 2016. And say, okay, we need to empower our crazies to fight their crazies. Ugh. Ugh. Gross. Gross. Gang. Gross. Don't want to see it. And this is, they know this. They're not stupid. No, some of them are. But they know this. They know that if, hey, Mooncake, how you doing? They know if Trump wins, that they rise in power and influence in the Democratic Party. Because they don't have, they don't have any seats of power on their own. They're parasites. They have to latch on to the Democrats because for some reason we let them, right? And That's how they have to affect change. They know this, right? They also realize, the extremist ones, that if Harris wins, their influence is going to go down because, again, they've staked their claim. They've picked their hill, they've picked their spot, and they've publicly declared this, right? They publicly stated this. We will not vote for Harris, right? She can't do it without us. This is the claim they're making. You can't do it without us. You didn't give in to our demands, so we're not going to vote for you, so you will lose. That is their claim. If, and it's a 50-50 shot, right? If we can win without them, that will do wonders for how we advocate, who we reach out to, and what positions we take. It will show that we don't have to cater to extremists to win. And in fact, that perhaps catering to extremists has been hamstringing us. That has been an albatross around our necks, right? A millstone, if you will, dragging us down. And we can free ourselves from those chains. We can free ourselves from their crazy, okay? Would you say that they are inferior? Yes! Their policies, their ideas are inferior to mine. Yes. If I thought they were superior, I would adopt them. But I do not. Why is this hard? Why is this hard? I don't know. Weimar125 says, I'm a far leftist, but I'm not supportive of Hassan. I want to be clear. I'm talking about extremists. You can be a moderate far leftist. Believe it or not, right? You may disagree with me. I know some people are gonna get at me for this. But I think that Sock Done Left, and he's been on my show a couple times, while I have big disagreements with some of his takes, right? I have big disagreements with some of his policies. I have big disagreements. I think he is a moderate far leftist. Does that make sense? Do we disagree? Do we agree? But I think that there are the extreme far leftists are someone like Mike from PA, someone like Frogan, right? Those are people we cannot work with, should not work with, and should exile from our community. Yes. Gang, sorry, I get a little emotional. I apologize. Why? Okay, what? So, this is another thing that I see these extremists doing, okay? Let me show you. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it. Give me a second. Maybe I can't find it. Man, look. The problem with having my Twitter pop off is my notifications go a little crazy. And I can't find what I've wanted to point out. Let me see if I can. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Sorry about that. See, this is in response to my post saying, you know, if you step out of line, you know, they're going to just come after you. If you apologize, it doesn't matter, right? Zombie Moses the Jew. Okay. Great name here. God, you guys cry so much. Why is... Hold on. And this is a problem I have with some of the red pillars too, right? It's just a problem in general. gang, it's okay if I get emotional. It's okay if anyone gets emotional. Men getting emotional is okay to do. It's okay. It's healthy, actually, to express your emotions, to be a passionate person, right? That's a healthy behavior. It's healthy to do that. Now, don't go crazy, right? Don't go crazy with it. Don't let your emotions control you, right? Don't be like, I'm mad, so therefore I'm going to beat everyone around me up. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But yeah, saying, I don't like this, I'm sad about this, I think it's bad, that's not, there's nothing wrong with it. And we should do that. We should do it more. We should do it more. $2 says, from Slongy and Stew says, wait, you are a man? I thought you were a wizard. I am both. Right? I'm both. Oh, man. I cast lots of spells, but I'm a man. I'm a man. I don't know, man. I don't know. Am I off base on my takes here with Asmongold? Am I on base in my takes with these extremists? Am I wrong? See, I think this is the difference between me and a lot of other people, right? I wonder sometimes. I wonder if, am I wrong about this? And I try to figure out if I am. Because I might be. Especially about the whole Asmongold stuff. Like, this is something that I'm not... I just don't know if he's being sincere or not. I just don't. Shoeboot says, can you summarize your Asmongold take? Sure. I think what he said was callous, wrong, and he should not have said it. It was ignorant, and no one should be genocided because they have a inferior culture. But when it comes to his statements on their culture, there are a lot of aspects of many cultures over there. Again, not the Palestinian culture. I think he was lumping into too much, right? But like, for example, in many countries in the Middle East, women get beat up if they don't wear a certain head covering. If they wear their head covering wrong, they will get beaten, in some cases to death. I think that aspect of their culture is inferior to my culture. Yes. Flanagan says, can't you go into his stream, drop a moderate donation, maybe $500? I bet you could speak to him. I'm not, okay, what is this? $500. Okay, this is another thing that happened recently. Do you guys know the N-word girl? Lily Gladys. Are you guys familiar with her? Right? Here, let me bring this up since this came up. Okay, this is the other interesting thing that happened to me yesterday. The other thing that happened to me yesterday. Okay, and this was a roller coaster ride, kings and queens. This was legit a roller coaster ride. You know who this girl is? Lily Gladys, right? She made a video calling Destiny a pussy, okay? Talked about how he dressed funny and was a cuck, basically. So I was like, you know what? This is a bit of a long shot. This is a bit of a long shot, but you know what? If you're going to call out Destiny, I bet I could make a show out of this. I think it would be funny, right? Slop. It's slop, but it's tasty slop, okay, right? It's just the drama content, and putting them in a room together would be great. So I DM'd Destiny, and I showed him this clip, okay? He hadn't seen it before I showed it to him, but I showed him this clip, okay? And he's like, no, yeah, fuck this. I want this girl. Like, if you can get this, I'll sit down on a show with you, okay? I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. Let's go. Let's make some content. Oh, man. And so I call her out, right? I'm like, okay, let's get it together. Let's put it together. She contacts me. We get it set up. We got a date going. It's going to be 23rd on Wednesday. Or we were working it out, okay? And then, ladies and gentlemen, she's like, oh, gang, oh, do you know I charge for this, right? I'm like, you charge for this? I've had former congressmen on my show. I've had Uyghur, I've had Brianna Wu, I've had Destiny, I've had huge names, Hutch, etc., etc., etc. No one's ever fucking charged. I've had Bishmo's mom, right? Man, what's her name? Millions of subscribers on Instagram, famous porn actress, right? Had her on. None of these people have ever even asked for money. Ever. Not once. So it shocked me. So I was like, oh, wow, okay. But I get it. Okay, like, fair enough. How much you want, right? I was like, what's the rate here? Like, I'm thinking, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if she says like $500, I could probably crowdsource that, right? I could probably say, okay, community, I need you to help me raise some funds so we can get this together so we can get this awesome content. Maybe, right? Maybe. And I was like, okay, let's see what you have to say. And so she drops $20,000. That's her price. 20,000 USD. She wants $20,000 to come on my stream for an hour or two. The fuck are you? The fuck are you? I wouldn't pay you $20,000 to shoot a porn, let alone come on my stream. What do you think is going on here? What do you think? What kind of production do you think I'm holding here? 20,000 just for perspective. Ben Shapiro, and I had this from a trusted source, okay, someone I don't think that would lie to me, right? Ben Shapiro, get him on my stream, would cost $800 for an hour. If I wanted to get Ben Shapiro on my stream, $800 for an hour. And this is the Daily Wire guy, right? Famous as you can get. Clouded up as you can get. Okay? He wants $20,000. I mean, look. Hey. If you can get $20,000 from some podcaster to come on their stream, more power to you. Get the bag. But you come in, look, if you're tuning into this stream and you think I got $20,000 just to throw at a guest for a single appearance, you're fucking retarded. Don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. and look, I get it, right? I get it. If I was hosting an event and I wanted a keynote speaker, okay? If I wanted a keynote speaker and I wanted someone to come and give a speech or a lecture, then yes, I should pay them for that because this is something that they're putting effort into, that they are doing. To come scream at Destiny about how he's a cuck and a pussy, and to have Destiny scream at you about how you're a cunt and a whore, I'm not gonna pay you for that, man. Like, you do that for the love of the game. You do that for the love of the game, or you don't do it. And again, if I had $20,000, if I had $20,000 given to me, okay? If I'll give you this. If Destiny gave me like $20,000 to get someone on stream, I'm getting like Keanu Reeves. I'm getting Liam Neeson. I'm getting someone that I want to talk to that's fucking entertaining and interesting. I'm not fucking getting the N-word girl. Not for $20,000. You can fuck right off. I don't know who you think you are. But if I had $20,000, there's a whole host of famous, influential, powerful people that would appear on my podcast. $20,000. Bet you can get Obama for $20,000? Yeah, I might even be able to get Obama. Barack Obama might come for $20,000. I'm not getting N-word girl. What is going on? $2 from Slongin Stew says, when I saw that on X, I almost offered the 20,000. Yeah. $5 from Slongin Stew. I heard Ben say he would take 100,000 to turn up in someone's living room to debate. I said, hell yeah. Mrs. Stew said, are you sure? Hawk Tua girl, I don't think she'd ask for $20,000, would she? Like, she seems wholesome. I don't know much about her, to be honest. Maybe I'm wrong. And look, I can see people being like, okay, I want some compensation for my time. I still wouldn't pay you, almost assuredly, right? But I can understand it. I can grasp it. I get it. 20 grand for an hour. To yell at Destiny for an hour. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. Man, oh man. What are we doing here, gang? Asmongold might come on my stream for free. I tried to DM Asmongold. I guess I think I told you that already. What are we doing here, gang? Do you think you could take Destiny Wick? What do you mean? I've debated him a couple times. You can go look at those and determine for yourself who you think won. Shoe Boot says she's just trying to get out of it. She knows she's not worth it. That's the most likely scenario, right? Let's be real here. It's likely that she made a call out, then she recognized that, oh, this person isn't just going to ignore me. He's going to actually do this. Oh, shit. I need a way to save face. So I'm going to put this astronomical number up so I don't have to deal with this. Time Watch says it's a 50-50 record between Wick and Destiny. I'm curious of which you think which one you think I won, which one you think I lost. Or which ones. I think I've debated, well, technically I've debated him 4 times. Okay, technically. But one was a long time ago. Okay, a long time ago. I don't think you guys remember that. No one watched me back then. Not that a lot of people watch me now, but you know. $2 from Slongin Stew. DGG only. Destiny Gish Gallop. Of course, Wick could. Weimar says, we can talk about how this will all blow over in 40 years, and I can back that up. Look, I don't think we're going to be talking about the N-word girl in 4 weeks, let alone 4 years. Chris Speaks, rating, party of 14. Welcome, 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 Raiders. Nice to have you in, Chris speaking. I hope you're speaking good. I hope your stream went well. We are talking about Asmongold today. We're talking about his apology video, and we're talking about the reaction to the apology video. We're also talking about extremists, liars, and how someone tried to get $20,000 out of Wick. Because I don't know why. But yeah, nice to see you all. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. And Wick kicking Destiny's ass? I don't think, look, I don't know if I kicked his ass. That's a little much. But yeah. Why does Twitch TV hate me? Says, do you think all cultures are equal or that some are better than others? I think that some cultures are better than others. Yes. I don't see, I honestly don't understand. I honestly don't understand how anyone can think that all cultures are just equal. Obviously not. Because in order to have that stance, you would have to think that the culture that we had here in the West, in America, 200 years ago, was as good as or better, like the same as the culture we have in America today. And no one serious believes that. No one serious believes it. We recognize that our culture, over time, has improved. It has gotten better. It has become a better culture, right? We've improved. We've grown. So we can recognize, just on that some cultures are better than others. Because our culture now is better than our culture was in the 1800s. We know this. This is easy. This is easy stuff. So, given that we know that some cultures can be better than others, we can look at, okay, how do we measure these things? How do we measure these things? Now, when it comes to like things like matters of taste, like food, man, like that's, I don't, Mexican cultural food versus Indian cultural food versus Palestinian cultural food. It matters of taste. I don't think that matters. I don't think it. If you're arguing about that, I think you're silly, right? It is what it is. Audacity with the 5 Wick TV memberships. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. You are a gentleman and a scholar. I appreciate you. Right? But we can recognize that there are aspects of cultures that are just worse. Like I used this example before, but it's a good example, so I'll use it again. A culture that does not allow its women to read and write is worse than a culture that does. Do we disagree? Is there anyone who would argue otherwise? Please step on up. Come to the mic. Yes, I'm sure about that one, Chief. I am sure about a culture that beats its women if they don't wear a certain head covering is worse than a culture that does not do that. Yes, true. You can't, okay, Monsieur Balls, you do know that women aren't allowed to read and write in Afghanistan right now. They are forbidden from going to school. They are not allowed in Iran. If you go outside, like did you guys forget the Iran protests? The student protests there? Because the morality police beat a woman to death because she wasn't wearing proper head covering? They beat her to death. To death. Like, they killed her. Oh, is that true? Is that true, White House? That they aren't even allowed to make noise in public in Afghanistan anymore? It might be. Shoeboot says, is it fair to judge a culture that is under oppressive rule, though? You could argue these rules don't reflect the values of the people. Again, unlike Asmongold, I'm not saying that they're bad people, right? I'm not saying that anything bad should happen to the people who live in these cultures. I'm saying that they should do what other cultures do. Leave the bad parts in the dustbin of history. They should improve. Yes. Do I condemn them as people for it? Not necessarily, unless they're upholding those cultural values. If they are out there if they're part of the group that's beating up the women, yes, I condemn them wholeheartedly. They are condemnable. I don't care if that's how you were raised, you're still condemnable. And I will condemn you for it. Is there any culture that doesn't beat their women? In general, in the West, there are consequences for beating women, and it's considered bad to beat women. It is not the same. It is not the same. And we can't do this cultural relativism bullshit that so many people do, right? So many people do it. So many people do it. They're like, well, we can't really judge because how can you judge these matters of things? Like, when it comes to like food and shit, fair. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about cultures who don't allow women to vote, don't allow women to drive, don't allow women to fucking read and write, don't allow women to go to school, don't allow, apparently, and I'm reading this now from CTV News, they don't allow women to speak. Based, right? But no, it's culturally bad. Culturally bad. And yes, it's condemnable. And yes, we should condemn them for it. And no, they shouldn't be genocided for it. No. I just don't get it. I don't get. I legitimately don't understand how someone can look at these two cultures and say, these are the same thing. They're not. They are not. Am I going to get banned for this? Am I going to get canceled for this? Are people going to call me racist for this? What are we talking about here? Shubut says, I'm a bit torn. I'm in agreement with virtually all your points. I'm just not sure if I would define it as culture. Oh man, that almost gets into a semantics game. How about this? Whatever it is, be it culture or otherwise, it is worse than whatever we have, be it culture or whatever, or otherwise. Is that better? That's something we can just 100% agree on? Like, because culture is more than just what you wear and what you eat. And legislation, governments, ways of doing things and running things are downstream in many cases of culture. Now, also, in addition, guys, gang, those governments and those legislations and all that can also influence culture. It's a complex ecosystem, right? They are not something that we can segregate. Not in any real way. There's too many interconnections between how a country is governed and their culture. It's not the same one for one, but they are very connected. We can see that in America. And we have a First Amendment that is part of our legislation, but it is also part of our culture. It has both been implemented because of our culture, and it also informs our culture and influences our culture. Both of these things are true. Both of these things are just true. Correct? Does anyone disagree? So we can look at, and again, I don't know why this is such a hard thing for people. We can say, we can pinpoint aspects of a culture, and we can measure those aspects against other cultures, and we can make decisions, and we should make it. And this isn't something, not only can we do this, But we actively should do this because there are parts of our culture that could benefit by adopting superior parts of other cultures, right? And I talked about this a little yesterday. I think that Chinese culture is better in how they treat their elderly, how they respect their elders, how they interact with their elderly. I think, and I could be wrong on this, but as I understand it, they are better than Western culture. So, we, being agents unto ourselves, right? Agents capable of making decisions and making judgments, we can measure, right? We can look at these two cultural aspects, and we can look at how Western culture deals with their elderly versus Chinese culture dealing with their elderly. And we could say, you know what? I think that their culture does this better. So we can change our culture because culture is not immutable. Culture changes over time. Culture is something that we can influence and change. So we can adopt parts of other people's cultures that are better than ours. And we should do this. It is good to do this. Now, we may have disagreements on what those things are, and that's fair, right? That's fine. But there are certain things that I think we could all just agree, right? That's why I go to the low-hanging fruit. And it's a very, very low-hanging fruit of, yes, cultures that kill people for being gay are worse than cultures that do not. That's just true. That's just true. And I would love to debate someone. Please, for the love of God, if you do disagree with me, I would love, please come on my show. Please, please, please. We'll get a moderator. You can choose the venue. Please, for the love of God, let me debate you. Call Nick Fuentes. It would have to be a Fuentes type, I would think. But no, there are people out there who think all cultures are equal. They're fools. They're fools. It's a foolish thing. Let's bring on my guests. Hey, gang.
Hello. Good evening.
Sorry, I was ranting about culture. Okay.
I agree with you. The Chinese are better.
In some ways they are worse. I think their culture around censorship is terrible, for example. But, you know, there's good and there's bad. $5 from Audacity to say this topic feels beaten to death. We didn't win 2 world wars back to back to give a flying damn about other cultures. Well, that's not my take, though. Like, I think we should care about other cultures, actually. And I think that we should adopt the better parts of other cultures and that we should leave the inferior parts of our cultures in the dustbin of history. And other cultures should do the same thing. But, yeah. Blacktoid, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you just seem...
I'm setting up my thing.
Okay, but I took a look at your face. I'm like, is he sad? Is he...
He probably just finished work, so, you know, there's some remnants of...
Yes. Oh, man. But, yeah. Here's the thing. Today, gang, I know this is a bit of a change in topic, right? But I went early so I could get it out of my system. For those of you who weren't watching, I was ranting about the Asmongold apology, my thoughts on that, and also cultural relativism.
Did he apologize? I didn't.
Yes, he did. He made an apology video. I don't know if it was sincere or not. Hard for me to judge.
Did he just say like, "I'm sorry," and like that was it? Or
no, there was a whole spiel, right? You'd have to go. I've linked it in my description. You can, after this is done, I encourage you to go watch it. But yeah, my basic thoughts is the unfortunate part about the situation. I'll summarize this, and we'll get to the topic at hand. The unfortunate part of this situation is that, sincere or not, it's impossible to ignore the proverbial gun to his head that was off camera, right? That this was done under duress. So it's a disservice to him if he is sincere, because there's always going to be that shadow over it, that okay, well, he did this, but even if he was sincere, if he didn't, it was going to be social death for him. And yeah, I just don't know how to.
What did he do? Like, this is all seems like very quickly moving. Like, what did he say that was so
Did you
bad?
not see the clip?
I saw some clip where he's talking about how like what? There's essentially like there's no civilian colonizers, but for Gaza, kind of like there's no innocent people there, something along those lines.
You
Am I wrong?
No, that's a weird retelling of it, but basically he said, yeah, I get it.
Tell me.
That's all good. Basically, he said that I think that the culture over there is worse and bad because they have genocide baked into their culture. So I do not care if they get genocided. That was his take.
Quite a take.
It's a take, yeah.
It's a take, yeah. And to his credit, he apologized, right? And he's like, "Man, no, I was an asshole. What I said was callous and wrong." And he waxes eloquent for about 20 minutes on it, right? And he's like, I've just been having a shitty time these last 2 years, and I feel I've become a worse version of myself, and I want to be better. And that was his apology. In the shadow of that, you have people telling him to kill himself, right? You have people like he lost his job at the OTK or he stepped down, I guess, from OTK and his Starforge PC partnership or whatever. So how much of it was sincerity and how much of it was because of that gun to his head, I don't know, but I'll let people judge. That's not what we're here to talk about today. Is our friend Admiral Gibbs able to make it, or did I?
He said he's going to be a few minutes late.
Oh, fair enough.
He didn't say. I think he just said late.
Okay, well, hopefully he gets here soon.
Because I took him down already pre-panel.
Okay. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about it's a bit of a hard to define topic, but I'll just for the sake of conversation, we'll call it DEI in science, right? There has been I hope my audience at least is familiar with Nature magazine, right? The science journal Nature, things like that. They recently put out 2 articles. One of those articles, and it showcased how women are being overrepresented, overchosen for professorial assistant professor jobs. They're just doing that. And the stream title, let me read it for you so I don't get it wrong. The article title was this: Women are better than men at science job interviews. Well, that was the title. They also put out a post, an article, about how almost all Nobel Prizes in scientific disciplines have been awarded to men. The article they put out about that, let me give you the title. What the Nobels are and aren't doing to encourage diversity. I hope, my dear audience, that you can see the stark difference in how these 2 situations have been handled by this magazine. And my question for today, my question for my dear guests and my dear viewers, are women just getting preferential treatment at this point in science? Why not? We're going to first start it with Corey Campbell. We're going to hear his thoughts, and we're going to pass it to Lactoid, and then hopefully Admiral Gibbs will get here sometime, and we'll talk to him. But here you go, Corey. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'd probably save most of my thoughts to, I guess, the open part. But I'm in science. Okay, I'm a biochemist. I spent a lot of time in academia, and I currently work for a biotech company. So I think I have a pretty decent perspective, although not an expert. But in some ways, there's totally, as outlined in the article the title of the article I just read. Women are performing better, and there might be some bias now in favor of women, but also there's data to show that in some respects, let's say when it comes to publication, and also when it comes to the upper echelons at universities and faculties, I think there's some relics of, let's say, discrimination against women. But the tides might be turning, and there might be at some point discrimination towards men as more and more women enter science. And what I would say is about the Nobel, which I guess we'll get into, is, well, not that I really I'm all that crazy about Nobel. I think they're pretty much kind of stupid. But there's also history there in terms of like really there's at least one good documented case of how, pretty much like a woman scientist like pretty much never taken seriously. And it's only after amassing like decades of research laughed at by her male colleagues of like, oh, you're just like kind of an idiot, and you know what I was talking about, and then they go on to win the Nobel. And I think there's many other such examples that I guess we'll get into, but I will leave it there for now.
Well, thank you for being here. It's been a while since we've had you on, and appreciate you showing up, and I appreciate you discussing this with me because I got some thoughts. Let's give it to Lactoid. What are your thoughts here? What are you thinking? What's on the mind?
Okay, so I mean, is this the only question? Is, are women favored? Because I think that it appears to demonstrate that they are, right? The at least the article. This is from Nature, right, Corey?
Yeah, it's an editorial though. Let's be
okay,
clear.
And I'm gonna, you're in the science field, and I'm gonna defer a little bit here, but reading it, I found something interesting about just the way certain things are phrased in terms of, well, some areas, men have an advantage, but I think that the specific thing here, when it says overall women were an advantage, 2/3 of women in the sample received at least one job offer compared with half the men. The advantage is particularly notable because men had slightly more first author publications in highly ranked journals. So what it appears to indicate is that despite the fact that women have less, I guess, credentials, if we're measuring credentials in terms of publications, they're still getting more interviews. And I think it's interesting how they phrase that better at interviews as opposed to jobs giving them preferential treatment, right? Like how convenient, right? Like this would be like, in the 1930s, like white men are just better at interviewing. Are they? Are they really better at interviewing? Or do they get the job despite not having as many credentials as perhaps like a black applicant or a woman applicant? I think that, I mean, you guys know my thoughts on affirmative action and DEI generally, and all these kind of non-meritorious ways of approaching things. I hate all of it. I think it's bullshit, and I think women have had it too good for too long.
Too long, like from day one.
At least from 2014.
Going back 6,000 years as a creationist.
What are your thoughts on this? Because again, I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I echo Lactoid's sentiment here, just from reading the article itself, just from watching how these two different situations, which are very similar, right? In both cases, there's a panel of people who are selecting what they think is the best, whether that be Nobel Prize or whether that be a job interview, right? Or a job application or an offer. In one sense, they're saying, oh, women just seem to be better at it. In the other, it's like, well, no, there has to be some structural issue here because it could not be the case that men are just better at winning Nobel Prizes. That would be weird, right? That'd be sexist to say. So, Corey Campbell, answer for your crimes. You're the scientist here. What do you think?
Yeah, it's all down to me. I put in the word to all of science, say, hey, stop hiring men. And that's why, well, also, I think a point that might be informative is, so there's a talking point that, STEM is dominated by men, okay? And like STEM stands for, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But, okay, when I'm talking about, in my mind, the real sciences, okay, the life sciences, such as biology, biochemistry, immunology, pretty much the life sciences, those are heavily, heavily dominated by women. Okay, I think it's like 60, 70%. Pick your discipline: immunology, microbiology, molecular biology, biochemistry. It's like, yeah, it's pretty much at least 60, if not more, % women.
Yeah, they're just better at it.
Well, I don't know about better, but
I mean, look, if we're using the standard that science is, that nature at least is setting, they're obviously just better, right?
Sure, going by that logic, but I mean, I take issue with the editorial. I'd say they're clearly more interested. Okay. Like, I think that's pretty clear. And so I'm speculating. I don't actually know for sure. But I think as the hiring committees, okay, tend to skew more female, okay, there might be some bias, and also like women just might interview better. Like I'll also be honest with like it wouldn't surprise me if just men don't have these social skills. I think that's a pretty clear talking point of like, yeah,
That's ridiculous. What are you talking? What is this bullshit? Don't have the social skills. What is this? Absolutely not. Men are, in fact, we can go through this. Pretty sure men are much more confident when it comes to speaking up for themselves, right? And in an interview, that can be important.
So assertiveness and confidence are two separate things. At least in
I think men are rated more highly in both of those. If I'm not mistaken, though.
Well, I would say men self-rate, but then I would say there's also like we can get into confidence and like what is actual confidence, because I would say men have what I would say we'll call overall on average fragile self-esteem, of like pretty much like narcissism, of like sure on the surface level like they're arrogant and they appear to have but like deep below the surface, buried, okay, there's a deep fear of inadequacy, or pretty much
a drive to do better. No, I agree. I wanted to read you something here from the Nature article, Corey, and I want you to answer for this. Quote, the finding that women in this sample were more likely to receive job offers than were men was, quote, pleasant to see, says Yvette Pearson, a STEM education researcher and the former vice president of DEI at the University of Texas in Dallas. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's pleasant to see this trend of affirmative action, or no?
Well, for a brief moment in time, like this, I think this is how things go historically. Of like, there's a pendulum swing. Of like, sometimes there's an over course correction. Just like I have no problem saying like that might have occurred with affirmative action, and then now maybe is the time of like to rebalance, where now maybe the pendulum could recalibrate and be more balanced. But I don't disagree with the sentiment of like, given the overall historical trends, and I think it's pretty clear in science, well, I think it's also pretty clear historically that go back 100 years, like a woman couldn't get a university degree, like in science. Go back to.
And I don't even necessarily disagree with that. This reminds me a little bit of how the UN measures sexism. I forget which UN organization it is. I think it's like UN, like with some women's UN organization. And they have like a gender equity index by country. You can go up right now on their like the UN's website and find what I'm talking about. I can probably find it.
Like the Gini coefficient for income inequality, something like that.
Yeah. And just so we're clear, like the number, like the lower the number, the better, right? If you get to like a perfect 0, it's like perfect equity. And if you get to 1, it's like perfect inequality or whatever. The problem is the way they measure it is in any way that women are better off than men, this lowers the number. So like in like, for example, Armenia, women are like 2 times more likely to get college degrees or something like that, maybe 3 times more likely. And this is solely seen as a good thing. Like this contributes to equity. This is just like an equity factor. Which is sort of, again, it's like, okay, it reminds me a little bit of the old adage, like, when I make the money, it's my money. When you make the money, it's our money, right? When it's in my favor, it's equity. When it's in your favor, it's sexism. Isn't that kind of what's happening here?
I mean, in my mind, if you squint hard enough, sure, but I don't know. I don't know that the parallel draws exactly. Where again, I think this is largely like historical in terms of like given I think a decent history of like whatever who wields the levers of power, and even just on admissions committee, it's like, yeah, this is like course correction. Like I don't see it as an issue right now. Like
now, as a motorcycle rider, though, a course overcorrection can be incredibly dangerous. Wouldn't you agree? Like like why are they celebrating this? That's my question. Like the fact that they're celebrating, like if they were talking like you and they were like, this appears to be a bit of a course correction, but it's good that like, this part of inequality has been overcome. Now we got to swing the pendulum back a little bit, give men some more opportunities. That's important. Okay, right? But that's not the rhetoric that I'm seeing here, at least not from Yvette, right? The rhetoric is, oh, thank God we're finally ahead. Yeah, thank God we're finally better. It's kind of a weird way of viewing the world.
Well, I obviously I don't know the intention of what they meant, but I'm speculating that the overall sentiment is like the measures to increase women in science have been working. of like pretty much like the encouragement and building up. And so it's good to see like in terms of backed up in data of like whatever we see a spike and now like a spike maybe in an overtaking or like literally an overtaking, at least when it comes to like job offers, right? Where we now we have the empirical data at least to demonstrate, okay, the measures that we've used to encourage more women in science and to be more inclusive and to encourage diversity, that has paid off. And now maybe it's I would be concerned if like, yes, if the rhetoric now changes, like we got to keep going. Like now we need to like push men out. Like obviously as a male in STEM, I don't want to be pushed out. And so it's like, yeah, if the trend continues, okay, and the rhetoric switches of like, yeah, it's just everything needs to be women in science, and that's the only thing that matters.
And
like,
I'll ask you this, Corey: are you worried that if you are going, are you worried that if you agree with lactoid too much, for lack of a better term, that you will be pushed out, right? That you will be ostracized, villainized, and receive less job offers, less job opportunities, and be basically oppressed a little bit. Like that. Are you worried about that at all? Do you find that to be a concern?
If your overall sentiment is like I got to appear optically like I fall in line, since I'm technically largely self-employed now, and also I have no problem saying that I think my competency speaks for itself. And I have a track record in terms of like of the people that have worked with me long term. I think my reputation speaks for itself. Of like people can recognize overall competence, and there are people at companies out there that want me at their company.
I have no doubt, Corey, that you're competent in what you do, right? We've talked about this. I have no doubt about that. The problem is, according to this article, being competent, like even being more competent, you're still at a slight disadvantage now. Like, by the way, slight is like generous, 2/3 compared to half. I mean, that's a little bit of a disadvantage, right? That is like a healthy chunk where you're going to have potentially people who are less qualified than you getting positions that maybe you want to get.
Well, there's a larger conversation in terms of like you brought up like as it's highlighted in the article of like despite men having more first author publications, especially in the prestige journals like Cell, Nature, Science. Those are like the big three, as in like virtually everyone who's in graduate school. Like if you can get a publication out in Cell, Nature, or Science, like that's what you want. But then there's large conversation of like, well, like I don't want to necessarily get into of like are publications good? Should we continue this model of like publish or perish and all that stuff? Of like for you that wants to have this merit-based system, it begs the question of like, well, what is merit in science? Okay, as of right now, the metric is like whatever H index, number of publications. Does that actually establish merit? I think there's a reason why. We can also look at, I don't know the data, but look at the researchers who are now like fraud is pretty rampant in science. Or at least there's a potentially a growing
in journals generally. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know the breakdown in terms of demographics
More
and gender.
women in science, more fraud in science. I don't know. Are these related?
It's a correlation. It's a correlation, Corey. It's a scientific term, right? What about that?
Well, so I'd ask the question. I don't know that. I'd be curious to see the data of what is the gender breakdown of those who have been like demonstrated fraud in science. I suspect it's largely men.
Well, wait, didn't it just come out that Kamala committed plagiarism or something? Am I wrong on
not
that?
a scientist.
Yeah, that's not the science thing, but there are plagiarism within science publications. But this is a comment made by one of my chatters, and they're referencing the article, and they'd like you guys to discuss this. And we're gonna give it to Gibbs first. Welcome, Gibbs. Nice to see you. I hope you're okay.
Yeah, I hope so. My tech issues slowed down a little bit today.
Oh, you know what? We're glad to have you. Tech issues regardless. Thank you for being here. This is the passage that they're quoting. That might be partly because men are more likely than women to apply to jobs even if they don't meet all the required qualifications. Pearson says, women might go into interviews with a higher level of confidence, she adds, because in reality, they have stronger CVs. What are our thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that might be part of it. Like this is all speculation, right? At the end of the day, like I can see that playing a factor. Whether it's a huge factor, like whether it's enough to explain this, I would say probably not. where like, yeah, I have no problem biting the bullet in terms of like there might be men who on paper look highly credentialed, but I think more and more it's being recognized that maybe publications, maybe this metric isn't the best metric, and the best researchers aren't coming from necessarily those who have publications in Cell, Nature, or Science, because there are clear documented cases, okay, of like, well, yeah, this, like I think in the past 2 years, like the president of Stanford like had to resign because, or not had to, but they voluntarily stepped down as a result of like a committee review because like, yeah, it pretty much demonstrated that they had a pretty large track record of, at the very least, scientific misconduct that they got away with for like quite a long time. And so there might be something, there might be a reevaluation of like, how do we judge merit in science?
Let's give it to Gibbs. What are your thoughts here, Gibbs?
Yeah,
Open
I mean,
this up.
I think that's really interesting. Whenever we say how do we judge merit, I mean, I think we can judge merit by basis of, I hate to use the word in itself, what merit is, right? Like merit means you've accomplished something. We can look and see what people accomplish. I think like this is a like a kind of a shenanigans argument Corey's making, really, to be totally honest. When I look, like, I can't speak for like the science fields, but I can speak at least for the fields I've experienced. One of them being the legal field. And I know when I went to go into law school, right, I definitely, when first we came in, and there was this definitely push for this DEI kind of agenda where we want to get certain people, certain groups to have an advantage, to be going ahead. And it turned out, for lack of a better way to put this, shitty lawyers. They were bad lawyers, and their clients ended up suffering. Like, and that's what it seems like overall. And it seems lately they've had a pushback kind of against this kind of thing. And I think that whenever we do things for the sake of inclusivity, yeah, that's a problem. I think that just if that's the sole value to do it for, yeah, that's no good. So as for the specific question you're asking, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I think that men are more likely to go after things they want. I think in terms of like working spheres, I feel like that culture is something they're taught from a young age, or at least they used to. Whereas like, hey, if you want to get something done, you're gonna have to do it yourself and go after it, and not be like gifted something. So I mean, maybe that's a cultural thing we need to do, but I don't think we should be implementing that as a policy per se.
I also want to say that it seems like that speculation is contradicted by the facts put forward earlier in the Nature article, where it's stating that, look, maybe it's because they have stronger CVs, but the only metric of actual merit that's brought up is saying that men actually had, or better in, they had more publications, first author publications in highly ranked journals. We can have a conversation about what merit is, and perhaps, if there is article doesn't, that's the only element of merit that's actually outlined in the article. But if there's a conversation as to, well, the women are coming in with incredibly high, test scores and GPAs and they're, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, maybe that's like some level of merit. But the fact that that's not discussed makes me skeptical that is the case. And I think that, the idea of journal publication still actually has some level of merit, right? At
No,
least
absolutely.
more,
Like yes, absolutely.
at least more than gender, right? The idea of like, oh, this person's getting published in Nature magazine, that's impressive, right? That's pretty impressive. Now, and look, I have some experience with journals, and I can say that, yeah, most of the submissions that come in are not good, and they need to be weeded out, and a lot of them are trash. I absolutely understand that. It's about finding, good articles, and really the good articles are the ones that you pull. And it demonstrates like a level of reading comprehension, a level of writing comprehension, a knowledge of the subject, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, the article just said, oh, they interview better. What is that like? How? Like, do they? It's saying their CVs are better, but yet their first author published less.
Yeah,
So,
so
in what way are their CVs actually better?
well, so I'll maybe try to draw on your experience, like as a lawyer. Although, like I don't know, I don't only share what you're comfortable in sharing. But I assume you work with, at an institution with other lawyers, as in you work with a team of lawyers. All right, is that a fair assessment? Like you're not the only person at your firm. You're not
Right.
self-employed. And so again, I'm speculating. Okay, so I have nothing to back this up, but I can imagine a scenario of like, if you're the department of whatever, biochemistry, chemistry, okay, and you're hiring faculty, okay, and like, yeah, you can come across a CV just like in your law firm. You could probably come across, like, on paper they look like an amazing lawyer, but then you have to ask yourself the question of like, are they a good fit for the team? right? As in, like, do they have the quote unquote soft skills, right, to fit in? Where if they're just like, belligerent, or they just come across as, a jerk, like you might be willing to overlook sometimes that, and the credentials speak for themselves. But I'm sure you've come across or had the experience of like, yeah, like on paper they seem great, but just like they just seem like an awful person to have on the team. Is that like
Of course,
totally?
for sure, absolutely. I
but that in and of itself is a skill, right? Like
I don't know if that fits just like the gender angle though that you're aiming for, because in my experience, it tends to be like women attorneys who are much more insecure with their role and thus behave in a way that's very like to try to prove that they're not insecure, which is much more aggressive. The most
Right.
aggressive attorneys I've ever worked with have been women by far.
Uh, well, so that might be an overcompensation, but I would say I would bring up overall. Who would you put the label of who tend to be more pro-social overall? You think it's
It's
50?
not. It's not clear. It's not clear.
Okay,
50-50 probably. Maybe a slight edge to men, but not clear.
it's
I would
slight.
say it's
Yeah.
men. I mean, it's men. Like, I mean, just today, I've gotten 4 texts from 4 different men in different fields asking me to come to different mixers, like, and just social things. Like, I never get texts from
Well,
women, or when I do, it's like,
I'm not.
Hold
I'm
up.
not talking. No. That's
What is
no,
this
that
a
doesn't.
self-report?
You
Like,
said that.
women
You
don't
said
talk to
social.
me. What are we doing here, Gibbs? Go
They're
ahead.
sociable. They talk to
I
me.
mean, this is my point. He just made the point that, oh, who's more pro-social? Well, if
No,
you're talking
as a psychological metric, that's not what they like.
well,
We're talking about, let's say, agreeableness. Okay, that's
sure,
typically what.
agreeableness. Yeah, I understand what you're saying with this, right? But part of this is the networking within the field, and you're talking about why these women aren't getting advanced, or men getting advanced, and like, sure, agreeableness is part of it, but so is, like, your social skills in general, and that's why I'm bringing up the mixer thing, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
but
know
don't you think that there might be a valid reason that women don't reach out as much to their men colleagues in texts and DMs and
No, I
things
mean,
like that?
I get like about one a week from like one girl, and then that she's like a real estate agent. She's always inviting me to random stuff, and then I get about 4 or 5 from different men, and that give me a variety all the time. And then I go and look on my Facebook or my Instagram, and I see women complaining about, why can't I find anybody to come to these? What's going on here? And I'm just like, well, because you're not reaching out, you're not doing the, like, you're not talking to people, you're not advancing your career, you're not taking any gumption and doing anything. You just want stuff handed to you, and that's what this seems like right here. It's the same thing. Yeah, you might not like that you have to go reach out or talk to people or communicate people within your field or people near a field adjacent, but that's kind of how it works. I just don't understand why, like, y'all are laughing about something that's like a real part of everyday life in the business world, or even I would assume the science world. Do you not speak to your colleagues in science to compare notes? Like,
Yeah, yes, we do. But so I think there's just like a misunderstanding. We have to sort of clarify, what do we mean by like pro-social behavior? Like, generally speaking, at least in the literature that I come across, they're talking about like whatever, empathy, compassion, like theory of mind. They're not talking about like, are women or men like reaching out to their friends and sending texts. That's not necessarily what I mean. Oh, just like,
yeah, I get that. I get that. But I'm saying that where would you categorize like networking in that kind of situation? Would that
uh,
not be under a social like aspect of that, or no?
if anything, I don't know for sure. I'm speculating, but I would think probably on average women are probably better at networking.
Yeah, I disagree.
Yeah,
But
but this could be the case. The problem is like controlling for this would be really difficult, and we already know that institutions will abuse this in order to reach certain quotas they're trying to meet. Right. So the best example I can think of is the Ivy Leagues when discriminating against Asian Americans. They would routinely categorize, black applicants as having more dynamism and being more charismatic and having that, gold factor and having, oh, they're so good, despite the fact that oftentimes the scores and all the empirical metrics were just overall worse. And then the Asian applicants would be seen as, oh, they're not quite as exciting or dynamic, et cetera. And the results of that speak for themselves, right? I mean, 2019, only about a third of black applicants to Harvard would have gotten in on their own merit, absent some kind of affirmative action program, right? 2/3 of them got in because of that affirmative action program. And of course, this is because they're looking to meet a certain like racial quota. Like, they can't say quota, but they're looking to reach a certain quota. And I know this because I have been in these meetings, and overheard some stuff that perhaps I shouldn't have overheard. But it's absolutely the case. These organizations have in their mind a certain percentage of diversity that they're looking for, and they have to find a way to do it, right? There's a reason why, in response to the recent Supreme Court case, banning affirmative action, really it didn't. The Ivy Leagues basically came out publicly and said, "Yeah, we're gonna do everything we can to make sure we can get around this. We're gonna really look at these exceptions that the Supreme Court allows us to use." And I think that we can't hide our head in the sand and pretend that perhaps scientific organizations and employers aren't going to be doing the same thing.
Well, let me ask
They're going to
directly.
rate women so high, and they're
Yeah,
going to
well,
rate men.
let me ask directly, like the panel directly, and we'll start with Corey, and I want to hear all your answers. So, do we think that scientific journals, scientific companies, corporations, etc., are giving women, regardless of whether you think they should or not, regardless of why they're doing it, do you think that they're giving women preferential treatment? Yes or no?
Yeah, I think so.
I, as someone who's gone through multiple hiring processes and has seen a little bit in admissions committees and all that stuff, I don't. At least I don't see it yet. I have not been involved in the hiring process for faculty, so I can't
Fair
speak
enough.
to that.
I would say, yeah, absolutely. They absolutely get preferential treatment. I mean, across the board. And I would say even more indicative of this is that we're seeing, and this is what's really concerning, is that it seems like this has been one of the first times in our history where science is like kind of being taken over by an agenda, right? And where science is actively being changed, due to this agenda. Like they're finding what's the word, like I can't think of the word, where they're finding basically positive results. There's result seeking instead of actually looking for data, like kind of thing, and that's concerning because I think it's a direct, I see a direct correlation and maybe even a causation because of the DEI hiring practices within the scientific community and maybe at large in the whole community at large.
Well, you say science taken over by are you talking about just DEI ideology or something else?
I mean, sure. I think that's one component of it. I mean, look at like psychology, for example. I mean,
Well, I don't
we
think
look.
it's a science personally, but I'm elitist.
Sure, but we look at like psychology per se, right? We look at that, and I mean, this is a soft science, whatever. But we go in there, we see, hey, okay, we used to diagnose things one way, and now all of a sudden, due to like social norms, things are being pushed a whole different way. Going, oh, well, you can't talk about this being a disorder anymore, et cetera, or that's taboo. And we're seeing this like a whole push to like normalize certain behaviors that used to be treated, and I think that's concerning. And I see this across the field. I kind of see this result-seeking behavior.
Well, so I take your point. Maybe in psychology, so I can't speak to like the social sciences because I'm not in that. I only go by what's published. But like, yeah, I think those concerns are valid concerns. Maybe with the social sciences, I don't think that's like bleeding over. At least I haven't seen it yet. Of like, I think the hard sciences like are pretty.
Let me ask, what's your and I know this is probably a hard question to answer, and I apologize for that.
Oh, nothing you apologize for.
Right. You say that you don't see any preferential treatment, but we look at the results, right? We can look at the evidence presented in the article, right, that we've all read, and also seeing how they treat when men have an advantage, such as a Nobel Prize. Is that not at least strong evidence saying that, okay, yeah, maybe they are getting preferential treatment?
Yeah, like, so to the article, I'm not going to necessarily dispute the article. Like maybe at faculty level, like I could potentially see that. Do I see it as currently like a huge problem? I would agree with you. If it reverses and now faculty is like 60-70% women, like I would take issue with that. I would say that, okay, well, we have to now push. We have to do what they did for women, got to do for men.
Do we though? Isn't that just gonna keep that pendulum swinging back and forth, right? Like over and over again. Like if it's causing problems, why are we using this tool, right?
Well, this might be a fundamental difference, but I think there is intrinsic value to diversity to some respect. Not
intrinsic.
Yeah, as in, diversity is a value, at least a value that I have to some extent. Not diversity at all costs, okay, but like yes, there's something, there's an intrinsic value to diversity, yes. Just like when you talk about, I think this is a potentially a good example. When you talk about collective intelligence, okay, and there's not a lot of research. This is, I think, emerging research. But okay, most people have the intuition of like, if you're trying to solve a problem, just gather the highest IQ people, right? As in, like, if you have an overall IQ, a collective IQ of like 1,000, that'll perform better than a collective IQ than like 900. That doesn't seem to be borne out, at least in the data that I've seen so far. Like, if you have a diverse team, okay, they actually do on average outperform just like the raw high IQ people, because there's a value to diversity.
So I'd love to see that research. After the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action, there were some people that were citing. I think there were some amicus briefs that were citing research, and there was other amicus briefs that were refuting that research. And I read both, and to me, the research on diversity actually having empirical benefits appears to be very weak. And
that's
a
why
lot of the evidence actually appears very, very weak, actually, to the point where, like, when you actually read the studies, and maybe you got a different one that I haven't read, but there was one that I read that, it was highlighting the benefits, and it said literally one of the metrics was dynamism. That was one of the metrics. And I was like, okay, well, does it increase test scores? No, they fall. Does it increase any other empirical metric of work? No, it doesn't. The studies didn't seem to indicate that, at least the ones that I read. Like, in weird subjective metrics like dynamism and, excitability and shit that's just like, well, I guess if you want to make up a term and then say that there's more of it, of course you can do that. But I don't think diversity is intrinsically like a good thing. Like, if you do have, like, the study does show that.
I said it has some intrinsic value. I'm not saying like maybe I'm just not phrasing it properly.
Right.
But like in some contexts, like, it is good to value diversity and maybe prioritize that to some extent.
Because it might lead to other like tack-on benefits.
Speaking of value, intrinsic value, I'm going to read some of these super chats and get some value from my stream, gang.
I hope you get a lot of value.
Yeah, me too. And keep giving.
Make sure it's diverse.
Okay, it's not that diverse. There's only 2, but they've done 90% of today's super chats, which is fine with me. They can continue to do so. $5 from Slong and Stew. My goodness, I just listened to the first 90 seconds of Asmongold's apology. I don't think he is sorry, but I don't think he knows why he is in trouble. $5 from Slong and Stew. Could we have Lactoid switch his camera so the blue flag is back on the right side?
My camera is how it always is.
Yeah. $2 from Slong and Stew. Admiral Gibbs joined, my favorite socialist. $5 from Audacity. All praise to our Lord and Savior Admiral Christ of Gibbsreel. And then $10 more from Audacity. The major issue with this is that none of this is happening organically. It all starts with an infiltration of industries by ideologues, and moves from there. The way it was before was natural. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I want to just I want to say, and again, I could be moved if Corey does have a study, and I'll have to read into it because every single study I've seen that claims this turns out to be bunk. But if Corey does have a study showing that there is a actual empirical benefit to like workflow or like product results or test scores or anything that we can like actually look at to like diversity as measured by what DEI is trying to improve, I could potentially be open to this. But if that's not the case, like, let's say it just is the case that like nursing being made up of like 98% women, like, that's just fine. Like, nursing is just as efficient. In fact, maybe with having more women there as nurses, it's more efficient. Then we would agree. Then we should just keep it. We should just leave it that way. No push to get men in there. Why do we have to?
I think there should be a push to get men in there personally.
Why? Wait, hold on. But if there's no benefit, why? Why do we care?
Well, it depends on how you're measuring benefit, because I agree with you. These things are difficult, maybe impossible to measure. Of like, diversity, and if you're just looking at test scores, like, you can only assess like what you can measure, and something is just like difficult to measure, at least currently.
Only assess what you can measure. That's right. That's a scientific, astute scientific observation.
You know what else I can measure? The $10 that Pupcan King has given me to say my potential super chats keep going over the word limit, but take some money. Thank you for your money. Thank you for your super chat. Respond though.
Like, if you can't measure it, like, essentially it doesn't exist. Okay, at least that I think is the overall guiding principle, at least in the sciences. And so that's why I say like the collective intelligence, that's emerging research, and I'm not gonna I would not die on that hill because it's pretty new and it's difficult to measure and assess. But what I would say also, it's like I think consciousness is a good example. Like, how do we measure consciousness? Okay, we study it. Okay, and we know that it's a thing.
Corey. Let's just take a step back for a second. You have someone like me who's saying, if you can show me empirical metrics that these discriminatory actions work, I could be open to them. Let's say, like, I have this position. Now, let's say there's two people standing in front of me. One person saying, I think diversity is intrinsically good for its own sake. And then you have another person saying, no, I just think white people should be in all these jobs just for its own sake, intrinsically. Which of them is right and why?
Yeah, like that's what I agree with you. You'd have to go with the empirics. Okay, absolutely. But then
hold up. No, Lactoid, I love you, buddy, but no, there is value, and I'll tell you the value. I don't know if we can measure this. I'm not a scientist, right? But there is value, and if there are obstacles put in place to different intrinsic group or immutable characteristic groups, like if being a woman makes it harder, right, to get into certain fields, I think there is value, even if it's better for the workflow if it was all men, right? Even if the unit operated at a more productive capacity, it was all men. I think that there is value in removing those obstacles so that if they want, women can go into these fields. I think that there is value in that. I don't know how we measure that exactly, but I think that the
no, we got to go further than that, though. Wick. Let's say, for example, let's just say that a workforce was better being all men, like the example you used. But do you think that like affirmative effort to discriminate against men to get women in that field? Do you think that would be a good idea?
I don't think that's where I would disagree with Corey. I don't think that it is intrinsically okay to for the what I call aesthetic diversity, right? As the aesthetic of being diverse. I don't think that's there. If no men are wanting into a field and no men are applying, then I mean, they just don't want to do that, and that's fine.
Well, yeah. So
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating necessarily that there should be like this active discrimination against to prioritize diversity or like to bring in diversity for diversity's sake. I am just saying like some of the measures. That's why like.
Yeah, but the
I'm
measure
okay
we're
with
talking about today is women are receiving interviews and job offers at interviews at a rate that suggests that there might be some sort of discriminatory practices, or to phrase it another way, that one group is being given preferential treatment simply due to their immutable characteristics because they have no balls, okay, right? Because they have boobies,
presumably,
right? They are being preferenced over the non-boob havers.
Well, yeah. So just like I think maybe Lactoid used the argument of like you should not look at an institution that's all white and assume that there's active racism there. Okay, I think it's the same thing where it's like it's a valid question, but just the numbers, just look at the raw numbers, doesn't mean that there's active discrimination against men. Again, maybe the hiring committee is just like looking at something else.
Well, that's true, but there is something within civil rights law. There's immediate like individual discrimination that's very like you call someone the N-word during an interview, not good. You're probably going to get sued. Pretty bad idea.
Gang,
but there's
pro tip: if you're in an interview, don't call someone the N-word.
So especially all the men out there, take these interview tips from Lactoid.
Yeah, don't say the word. Don't do it. Generally, don't do it, but don't do it during an interview. That's for sure. But the name of the concept is escaping me right now for some reason. But there is a concept where if you have an industry, for example, a factory or workplace, that has enough employees to be under the jurisdiction of the Civil Rights Act.
Wait, hold on.
You-
People are saying that Lactoid learned that the hard way. Is that true? Can you confirm or
No,
deny?
no. I don't. I've never done that. Okay,
Okay.
Jesus Christ. But if let's just say, for example, you had a factory and they were hiring just white people, right? Disparate impact is the concept of what it's called. And the government notices, hey, based on the demographics of the area, this company should be hiring a greater proportion of black people, but they're not. Work for it, like manager, what's going on? At that point, it's the manager's duty, like the responsibility of the manager, to prove to the government that they're not being racist. And so if, like, for example, the government notices, hey, you're giving preferential treatment to white applicants, why? Like, and then you have no explanation other than they interview better. I don't know what to say. You're probably going to get in a lot of trouble. Seriously, like this is something that you got to be really careful about if you're an employer. Just knowing the demographics of the area that you're in and the types of interview, like the applications that you receive and the interviews that you do, because you got to be able to show that you're actively not being racist. And what Wick is saying is, at least on face value here, it seems like men with higher credentials are being turned down at a higher rate. So what's the explanation? Isn't the burden of proof then on the employers to say, here's why we're hiring women at a higher rate?
And
like it seems like their responsibility.
What makes this hard, and then I'll let you respond, Corey. And thank you for the $2 from Audacity to say, what if it's a job at Racism Inc.? Okay, fair enough. Play to the crowd, buddy. You do you. But what makes this hard is we're talking about a field, so it's not just one company. It's not just one corporation. It's not just one entity or institution. It is an entire field. And again, it does make me wonder, are there biases at play? Because there seems to be evidence that there is based on this.
Yeah, so
I don't know how strong that evidence is to you, right? But this is at least some evidence that, something fucky-wucky's going on over in science land, okay?
well, yeah, whether it's legally feasible or not, I don't know. But I'm all for transparency of like I think hiring committees should be more transparent. Like this is the reason why we're hiring you, and if it's more of like a public process, I'm not against that. Although also what I would say is in response to Lackley, I think I don't know if you're just like whatever arguing the legal process versus like your philosophical beliefs. From what I understand, like I think philosophically, like you're okay for a company just like to hire for like whatever of like aren't you like like this is philosophically aligns with you of like if they prefer men for no reason other than they're men.
Hold on. Yes, just to be clear, I do think though that when you have this weird system where it's like you can discriminate against white men, but you can't discriminate against people who are not white men, and that's an unfair rule proposed by the government. But I'd give them a lot more credit if they just came out and said, "Yeah, we want less men. We just want to hire women. Fuck you." I would be like, it seems like maybe we should like equalize these rules a little bit, but good on them for being brazen about it.
Well, yeah, so that would be the divide of like if it was a more transparent process, which I think it should be, where someone wants to look at what the hiring committee's actually making their judgment on, I think that should be like accessible, especially if these are like some of these universities are public institutions, at least in Canada. Okay, we don't know their hiring process. I think that might be a problem. Where it's like, I would be on the opposite side of lactoids than philosophy of like, that would.
I know you don't agree with it. Like if it was white people, right? Like let's say Racism Inc. That was the company that was brought up earlier by one of your super chatters, right, Wick? Let's say Racism Inc. is founded, and they just want to have just white applicants. They just want to have white men working there, and they're like, you know what? Nobody else need apply. I don't think you'd be for that being legal, would you, Corey?
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I didn't.
Can Racism Inc. be allowed to only hire the whites?
Oh, yeah, no, that would not fly with me.
Yeah.
Joe, how you doing, buddy?
What are you talking about? Come on. Sorry, Kamala Harris went to go and embarrass her ass on Fox News, and y'all are just talking about DEI 2024.
Well, hey, crazy. I went live early.
DEI, Kamala Harris, it works.
Look, I was I went live early because I wanted to discuss the Asmongold thing. I haven't seen Kamala Harris's interview yet.
Oh,
so
I'm so
I
sorry
can't
for
speak
that.
to that. But we are talking about DEI when it comes to science, specifically when it comes to gender. Recently, Nature put out an article saying, and I want to quote this article directly, and this is the title. I'll read it to you. Give me a second.
Yep.
And also, just to be
Women-
clear, it's an editorial. Sorry to interrupt, but like,
Still-
it's just one person. It's an opinion piece,
It's in
basically.
Nature.
Yeah.
Nature, right?
It is.
Women are better than men at science job interviews. And they also released an article very recently. What the Nobel, because again, they put out a tweet saying the Nobel Prizes are going in almost entirely to men. And the article about that is what the Nobels are and aren't doing to encourage diversity. So the question of the day is, why are these two situations treated so differently? Where we have a group of women who are outperforming, and the article is stating, oh, they must just be better, right? And then we look at another situation where we have a bunch of men winning an award, and the problem is, why is this not diverse enough, right? Why is there some kind of systemic issue where a reason that men are outperforming in this? And the topic of the day is DEI, and is it something we should do in science and things like that? It's all related. So that's where we're at. I hope I got you up.
Yeah.
Welcome to the conversation.
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious that you need to recognize that, especially for science, the science is faulty because of the relationship between knowledge and the object, and then whatever mode of study that you have for that. So if you have a bunch of men determining what's going on with women, it's pretty reasonable to say that there's probably some aspects about being a woman that a bunch of men in a room making decisions are not going to understand or even be able to properly contextualize. So I do understand the importance of having a diverse set of people in a jobs environment. That could be, obviously, we're talking about science, so you're going to need people in all different spectrums of whatever identities are. And even then, just by virtue of the identity being in the room, doesn't mean that they're going to actualize whatever thing in the context of science. And this is true in most other fields as well. I do think there's something to say about, sure, women are outperforming men in interviews. I'd have to look at the editorial to understand what that means practically, because you can have a good interview and not get accepted in the job in the first place. But I guess I would say they're treated differently because the context is different. The context as to why women are doing better in interviews, but then men are the predominant recipient of a X or Y prize. It's important to investigate that and look into that, because it's not unreasonable to think that there's potential bias within that, because that's really what these prizes are. These prizes are based upon bias of an individual.
Well,
it doesn't matter
how interview not.
Well, what does that's what I mean about context. What does better performance mean in an interview?
Yeah, pretty much what it is. And also, I think another thing to add, that's a potentially piece of the puzzle, it's I think maybe one of the reasons why that person in the editorial said, it's good to see this data or good to see this trend is because despite this, even maybe going so far as despite the potential active discrimination against men, women are still largely underrepresented when it comes to full tenure track faculty positions. I don't think it's even close. It's still 80-20 men or 70-30 men when it comes to science faculty. And so that also might be a reason why they want to see this promising trend of they need more of the job offers.
Better at it, right?
This is tenure track. If they've been there for 50 years, to change the trends takes a long time. They either have to retire or die.
Most times they just die. So it's or for better or worse, there's some type of faculty position that is higher up within the administration, and then they just quietly transition to that. because I'm sure you can probably speak to this a little bit, Corey, maybe you like to it, where it's like once, especially at the university level, once you get tenure or some type of cushy thing that protects you, they will sit on that forever. They're not trying to give that up. But hey, I don't know if y'all talked about this, but I'm totally fine with men losing jobs for the sake of women. Like, I don't think it's as much difficult of a hill to die on. Like,
We're gonna give that to
I don't know how to break it to you.
Cook. You
Like,
can land your plane, but afterwards, Lactoid has something.
I mean,
to
that's
say,
it. Like, if you're looking to have let's say you're looking to have a more diverse environment of individuals, right? Let's say you have 100 positions, too many white guys. You're gonna have to fire some white guys. This is how it's gonna line up. So it's gonna mean that like the way that you approach hiring, the way that you approach practices at the workplace, there's something within your job that's prioritizing. We'll normalize to say men. Like we'll normalize say like there's something within your job that's like normalizing a situation where it's just a bunch of men. And there's only 100 positions, and you want more women. You're going to have to come up with some unique ways of telling all those men that their position is going to change for the sake of women. And that's not mine. That's not our job to figure that out. That's their problem. Which is why, and a lot of times, like diversity, like the diversity part of the DEI gets over prioritized for all the other, and for the sake of all the other things. Like, yeah, sure. Diversity does mean you want to have like a set of people of unique experiences and voices and what have you, but the will to make those changes is really hard.
But
If I don't want that,
Joe.
Okay.
I love you, Joe, buddy. But let me ask you this: you got a position,
Sure.
100 people. They're mostly black men that are filled.
Sure.
Do we sacrifice those jobs for white women?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, fair enough.
If something,
Fair enough.
just because something is homogenous in the favor of whatever my identity is, does not mean that that's a good thing.
Okay.
So if you have something that's 100% black
Well, I'm
people,
not talking 100%. Like we have like severe overrepresentation. You would tell these black men who've earned their job, right? They've earned their space. They're qualified. Hey, sorry, there's too many of you. We gotta let the white women in.
I'd actively just stop hiring black men. I don't have to make it sound like y'all gotta go. I would just put them in the position where it's like, look, we're not hiring any more black men or black people broadly. Like, and I have no problem in terms of that. Like, but again, like it depends on what you're trying to do, right? Like if we're looking at this broad spectrum of like, hey, we need to have like, it's just like, we'll say in athletics, right? Like one of the problems that sometimes sports have, especially on the women's side, is that men end up being in those positions of whether it be coaching, athletic staff, and the residuals of that. But the only way for you to get more women is to hire more women. So you're going to have to make some type of strategy to go about that. Is that going to mean firing a bunch of people? If you want to, it can be. Have fun dealing with that when you justify it, even though there's a lot of like at-will states. But however they decide to do it, that's going to be their, like a business's determination of that. For me, I don't care about visual diversity like that. I care about the substance of people being at the table to make those decisions. So if there's a job environment that's where like, if the job for me is something that's relative to the identity of a group of people, then I'm obviously going to make sure that there's people of substance in that. And sometimes those people of substance
we're talking
are not
science
people that,
today, right? Like science is I know it's a broad field, right? There's many different subfields, I guess, categories of science, like biology, physics,
fields, subfields, disciplines.
Right,
Yeah,
whatever you want to call them. So that's kind of like the lens that we're looking at today. So again, for science as a field, right? As a overall kind of institution, as an overall grouping of a collective of disciplines, you would have this same position. You think that it is good and intrinsically good to have a diverse set of scientists.
you need to have a diverse set of scientists. Yeah, it's totally understandable why you would come to that conclusion. However, the problem is, and this is why liberals get this so wrong, is that they think that like diversity is just by the identity of the individual. You can have somebody in the field of science who knows a lot about women, in some cases more than women. So, and it's just admitting that. It's just admitting that, hey, and just dying on that hill.
More about women than women do. I'm just curious.
I think it's reasonable to believe that somebody that specializes in a field of science, in particular, will say it like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a science field that's relevant, that's like easy for people to understand. If I am an OBGYN, I'm a male OBGYN, and my life has been about OBGYNs and being an OBGYN and all the things that encapsulate that, I think it's reasonable to believe that OBGYN probably knows more about women than a lot of women do navigating their own bodies.
Fair enough.
Because his job is to understand that better than them. So like that's the core of their job. Now, are there certain aspects of that they probably miss? Absolutely, without a doubt. But that's going to require, in most cases, a female OBGYN to fill those gaps. So both of those people have importance in their field. Like you would not want to have an entire office of male OBGYNs. And I would argue that considering the context, it might be preferable to have a majority of female OBGYNs, but that's at the discretion of like how it ends up to be that.
Okay. Lactoid, thoughts? And lots been said.
Go
ahead.
Yeah. And so just a couple things I wanted to address. At will employment doesn't mean that you can discriminate based on race in hiring and firing. Somebody who was to say, we're just not going to take any applications. So like white men need not apply or black men need not apply. You are going to get in a lot of trouble. You're going to get your pantsuit off you.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even advocate to that. That wasn't even like the position I say you want to do. Like, there are many ways to say no. There's many ways to say no white people, no black people, no women without explicitly saying that. We know this.
Well, right, but like, but that's the thing. Like, even if you use like a implicit way of doing it, that's still illegal, right? It's
you have no way of proving that it's. You have no way of proving that it's implicit.
But
like implicity is violence.
Well, I think
you're
that,
literally hired. You're literally.
I think. Hold on, just to bridge
no,
this gap. Just to bridge this gap. I think Joe is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. I don't mean to put words in your mouth here, but you are advocating that legal or not, this is something that should be done.
I'll give you a really easy example. I can directly target a zip code and hire more black people based on people who live in that area. And then someone can make the argument, well, you just hired those people because they're black. These are the people who applied. I looked in this area, I looked in these areas, and these are the people who applied. So maybe I had the intention of explicitly hiring black people, but there's no way to prove that. That's how the practice works all the time anyway. So I'm not saying I would do that, but I'm saying that's what I'm talking about.
Sure. When people say like there's no way to prove that, just to be clear about how the law is put into practice, is that if you use another way of like pretextually discriminating against a certain group of people, that's not, you could still get the pantsuit off you. So for example, if you have a factory who's like, we're going to look at all the zip codes of the city. Oh, here's where the black people live. We just have a policy of not hiring people from those zip codes. You're getting the pantsuit off you, right?
Well, that's categorically a violation. Like the point I'm trying to make is that
not categorically.
The people who do these things are smarter than you and I, and have a whole sect of people.
No, I know. I defend
to say,
them sometimes.
can I do that? So those people are diabolical pieces of shit. So like, well, I can't make I can't make the argument of like, hey, how do I do this? But that's like, for instance, what people are thinking in universities right now. Like they already had some shit in place to hire black people or have more black applicants, but they just do it based on the things that were already allowed in the first place. That was the point I was trying to speak to. I didn't want to derail you too hard. My bad.
I'm just trying to just make it clear that like, a lot of people are misconceptions when it comes to at will, and you can't, even under a pretext, you can't racially discriminate, and whether or not it's a pretext is not up to you or I, it's up to a jury. If a jury thinks, in their opinion, that you're doing this because you're a little bit of racism going on, that's going to be enough for major penalties and massive lawsuits, hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps millions of dollars in certain cases. It's a major deal. And throughout on the other parts of what you were saying, it seemed like there was two things that you said that I think were contradictory, and so maybe you can kind of square the circle here and put them together. So you started off by saying that you really don't have a problem with men losing jobs to women, but then you talked about how, well, in certain cases, like a man can know more about like a certain field, like women's issues or OBGYN related issues than a woman can. And I agree very strongly with the second point, which is that, if there is a demonstration of merit, regardless of the gender or race of the person, on knowledge of a field that's relevant for the job, then that, of course, is merit, right? But if you have an all-male OBGYN center and all the men are qualified and all the men are good, then I don't see why it's necessary to have like a woman there. I don't see why it's now. I'm not saying that we shouldn't hire a woman. I'm just saying, why would we deny the advancement of maybe a more qualified person just for the sake of having a woman there? It just doesn't seem to be
because when I'm denying a bunch of women who feel more comfortable having a female OBGYN, so having men compromises my ability to make money. So I'm more than happy to make more money if it means hiring more women. That'll be the position I'll be at.
I'm sympathetic to this position. The only issue with this is, first of all, this is a sort of merit now if we're talking about just like how well this person is able to interact with the community. But would you be comfortable with this, let's say, operating the other way, like perhaps the other way around? So let's say you're in a very racist community and nobody there wants to work. Nobody there. No, so nobody wants to work with the black cashier. You're saying the business should be fine saying, look, we can't hire you. Sorry, our customers are racist. They don't want to.
Because the problem with that is it's literally a civil rights violation. If you are not going to somebody because they are black in the workplace, that is categorical workplace discrimination.
No. I'm not saying in the work. What I'm saying is that like you're saying, well, we might have to have a woman OBGYN because like women coming in might feel more comfortable with that OBGYN. What if like in the town, all the customers to the local Walmart are hyper racist and they don't feel comfortable going to the black cashier? Can Walmart then discriminate against black cashiers who are applying for the comfort of their customers?
No, I mean, my practice would be deal with it. Like deal with it. If there's a black cashier in a job and you don't feel comfortable going to that black cashier, go to another one. Nobody cares about your feelings.
Sure.
Especially in the context of groceries, because now we're lowering the stakes here. Like initially, like there's a lot of reasons that you can make justifiable arguments why a woman, would want to go to a female OBGYN. You can make a bunch of arguments that are totally valid and understandable. Now, when it comes to cashiers, like you have to go through a lot of hoops and ladders to say there's a justifiable argument to not go to a cashier because they're black. And you just be doing like Asmongold racist apology. No,
this is where I disagree. I think that I guess
we brought it back to Asmongold, gang. We brought it back.
I didn't make the argument. Like if you're saying
I'm making the argument. Like I think that I'm probably more sympathetic to the woman in my personal opinion. But like in terms of just comfort level, I'm sure there are racists somewhere who are intensely uncomfortable being around black people. And so if you have a town, let's say, where they are intensely uncomfortable, let's say even more uncomfortable than a woman going to a male OBGYN, if they're more uncomfortable dealing with a black cashier, then I don't understand how it's okay to say, well, you know, we can't, it's bad to have a whole bunch of male OBGYNs because we should have a woman for the women who prefer, you know, women OBGYNs, as opposed to a situation where like everybody in this town is like really racist and they just don't want to be around a black person, right? It seems like you're like if the customer is always right sort of idea when it comes to OBGYNs, but not when it comes to cashiers.
Well, they're not directly customers, but I think also a thing to remember too is that the historical context of race and women's healthcare are totally different realities. So there weren't how do I say this in a way that's nice and friendly with terms of service? There weren't people saying segregation now, segregation forever in the context of OBGYNs. But that was something that black people had to deal with. There weren't people saying that I would rather die than to live next to a black person. I mean,
but that's irrelevant to the comfort level of the customers, is what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, the thing with what you're doing, respectfully, is that you're trying to put logic to illogical things. Racism is illogical. So when you're trying to approach an illogical concept, which is racism, to logical situations, like the comfort that a patient might have for a male or female doctor, then you're going to be left with a bunch of contradictions that make no goddamn sense. Because racism is illogical.
What's the logic with like being more comfortable around a woman OBGYN?
Because it's reasonable to say, it's reasonable to argue. I'm not a woman here, so I'm not going to make the one for one argument for that. But I think it's much easier.
Do we have women in chat? Women in chat, if you're here, if you prefer a male OBGYN, press 1. If you prefer a female OBGYN, press 2. Go ahead.
You can make arguments. The problem is all the arguments are like going to be in line with what like a raving racist would say about black people. Like, but again, I feel unsafe.
Approaching an illogical concept of racism is only going to be met with contradiction, right?
I think sexism and racism are both equally logical and illogical.
I mean, if you want to make the argument, like, sure, this is your argument you can make. Sexism is also illogical. But again, like, my point here is that when you're approaching a illogical concept, and I mean, it's our fault. Americans created this shit. So it's like when you're approaching an illogical concept of racial construction and the contradictions that exist within that, and then you try to approach it logically, and then like you run into these traps of like, well, I could hear a racist saying this and it makes total sense. Well, yeah, it's by design. It's designed to, instead of actually dealing with the racism, you can use it in parallel argumentations to maintain it. So like maintaining racism is using the argument of the comfortability of male and female OBGYNs to the comfortability of black and white cashiers.
Okay,
Or
here's
in this case, black or non-white. Well, not black or non-black, rather.
Speaking of approaching things logically, $5 from Pumpkin King. I think I'm saying that right. Diversity, though, helps science. Diverse characters are likely to have diverse thoughts. Therefore, diverse characters likely help science. And then $5 from Audacity.
That is true.
Wait, can I just speak on that though before we go to the next super chat?
Yes, go ahead.
So Corey just said that's true. I'm just going to reiterate.
Absolutely.
Sure. I'm just going to reiterate. I reject that. One of the main things I wanted to say, to Joe's point initially, which was I reject this concept of diversity being intrinsically valuable until somebody shows me empirically that it is valuable. I just hear a lot of buzzwords. Dynamic. It's different ways, different thinking, et cetera, et cetera. Show me where that actually is applied, and I'll consider it. But until then, no reason to think that it's valuable.
I mean, well,
go ahead.
As the result, like that's the thing that's kind of confusing to me, right? Because it's like, it just sounds like you want to maintain the status quo, and the status quo is essentially just like white dudes. And anything that compromises the availability of white dudes is something that's like discouraged. I don't think that's the position you generally hold. It sounds like you use meritocracy as a shield from that overt white supremacy. But I would say that like, the argument about diversity, because you seem kind of skeptical about it, everybody has unique experiences and unique ways of approaching problems, and it ought to be every field, especially science, to make sure that there's a diverse set of individuals looking at a particular phenomena to try to understand it better. That's going to require people from a bunch of different backgrounds and a bunch of different identifiables that could be identifiables of their like present characteristics, and it could be like their invisible identifiers of like their personal backgrounds, where they studied, stuff like that. There's a reason why we send a bunch of people who have nothing to do with space into space, right?
Yeah, so I do use meritocracy as a shield, and I use it to shield white people and white adjacent people like Asians from discrimination. I don't think they should be discriminated against.
What do you mean by white adjacency when it comes to Asians?
That's a statement that you made earlier. I was poking fun at it slightly.
What? I never said anything about
in the past. You called Asians white adjacent.
That. Oh my God, that's fanatic, not me. But I appreciate the attempt. But
okay,
plus one on that.
$5.
Again, to be clear, fanatic believes Asians are white. If you want to argue about the whiteness of Asians, you can talk to fanatic. Don't come to me about that shit.
I will find the quote. It was for sure you, but
it was not me. It was absolutely fanatic.
Either way I fit in, I'm both half white and half Asian, so I'm good.
Fair enough. $5 from Audacity. To push back against Joe a little here, there is discriminatory hiring practices audit that can and is done and mainly initiative based, not regulatory. And thank you for the $5. I appreciate you.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the limitations of civil rights, right? Like we don't have a compulsory civil rights system in the United States. So the only way for discrimination to exist is someone to make the argument of its existence. So, like, if you believe discrimination to be something that is wrong, then it's your duty to present that to whatever branch, whether it be the DHPA or there's a bunch of different divisions that exist within that. But that's the problem. This is a limitation of civil rights. Civil rights it's not a compulsory thing. Damn.
Did I miss something?
I
Something go wrong with my internet? I don't know what's going on.
No, I think Lacto is just processing.
Oh no,
Yeah.
sorry, I was muted for a second. What was the question asked to me?
Well, it wasn't really what the question asked. He was making a point. And, fair enough. Let me just kind of direct this a little bit. Given that, for those of you, and I think Joe thinks this, and I think our friend Corey thinks this, that as to the super chat earlier, diversity of thought leads to diverse characters, therefore diverse characters leads to diversity of thought, and that's necessarily good. Can you give me your best arguments here on to why?
Yeah.
Why is it that having a diverse cast of characters in science, and by diverse cast of characters, I mean men, women, white, black, etc., what is the value there? Can you describe it for my audience? Explain it. Please
Okay,
sell us on it.
Sure. I'll do my best. So one of the reasons why I value diversity to some extent, again, it's not like my number one value, and I'm not advocating for like this should be priority number one for all institutions and every single person out there. But I do think there is some merit to diversity, and this is the space that I'm coming from. So do I think all diversity is equally good? And my answer is no. Just prioritizing like we need diversity of some identity, like whatever women, skin color, or diversity in sex, skin color, whatever race. Do I think that there's always value in that type of diversity? No, but the type of diversity that I'm generally alluding to also, and one of the reasons why I value it is because, and this is just like personal experience, so I have no actual empirical hard data to back it up. But when it comes to problem solving, okay, and I have my training and my background. I'm a biochemist, okay, or molecular biologist / biochemist. And the way I solve a problem, I'm trained in a certain way. And the way I problem solve, at least in my experience, is different than a chemist and an engineer. Where sometimes in the companies that I've worked for, like the way an engineer approaches a problem is totally different and sometimes better than how a biochemist approaches.
But do you think that applies when it comes to gender, to men and women?
Potentially in certain contexts, not every context.
Can you give me an example of one of these contexts that would apply?
Sure. I think the OBGYN example that Joe Lewis gave is probably a good example of like there's probably some value in terms of like having both men and women in that field. Same thing with nursing. Like even though nursing is like 95% women, I think there's some value of like, I'm not saying it should be 50-50 in nursing necessarily, but there should probably be greater diversity in nursing. There's probably value in that. That is not noticed yet.
Okay. Any thoughts
and
on this?
I think one example that I would bring to that is, let's say, from what I understand of nursing, and also as someone who has extensive experience as a patient, a challenge for some nurses, depending on the context, is like restraining a patient. Okay, and maybe having more male nurses might be beneficial.
Fair enough. Joe, do you have any answer on that? I want to give them both a chance to make their arguments before you go off, Lactoid. But yeah, Joe, same question to you. Like, can you sell us on this diversity, if that's something you actually believe in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a DEI officer, but I would say the benefits are enhanced in, like, if I'm really just kind of broadly saying things, like diversity of perspectives leads to a broader range of ideas of approaches to problem solving, which is something that if science is in the interest of, I wouldn't say trying to solve problems, but to solve a problem so it's definitively answered, but to definitely make sure that the questions are always presented in such a way and answered in such a way that can lead to the advancement of the particular field. I think that's a very important thing. Like scientists with different backgrounds may challenge a bunch of different things, existing assumptions about groups of people, unique experiences that can lead to particular scientific breakthroughs, and then just can lead to, because of this synthesis of different backgrounds, can lead to better overall performance and rigor of individuals. And then there's also just sort of like the if I were to make it like kind of broader, the geopolitical implications of that, like the way that people deal with different fields of study are not the same. So doctors might be looking at the same problem in different places across the world and coming to different conclusions. And I think it's important to bring those people together as in many different ways to work on those things. And then there's also just the present fact that you got to recognize that not every single country has the exact same navigation with oppression and discrimination. If you have a field, and in America, it was science, that Black people were explicitly barred from, and then all of a sudden you're trying to say like, okay, we need more Black doctors. And it's like, well, we systematically made sure that there are no Black doctors. Then you have a problem. And then the question is like, okay, what are the unique experiences that exist with Black people that are pushing them away from the field that we need more of them? So, and that's the question that no department has a good job in solving, but science is bad about it, like really bad. And so, if you only position, which we did in America, white people to be doctors, and then you do that for generations, there are a bunch of barriers that are obvious and otherwise that might discourage people from being Black people, in this case, from being doctors in the first place, or discouraging women to be anything besides nurses. And these institutions did this systematically. It wasn't something that a bunch of, not to racialize it too deep in this dream here, but it wasn't a bunch of white people. Well, there were white people conspiring to make sure that Black people never got into these fields. But in most cases, you had people in different ends of the spectrum. You had people who overtly didn't want these groups. You had people collaborating with those who didn't want to be with these groups and making different types of concessions. You had people who passively did not care at all. So they were kind of like neither here nor there, but apathy tends to pull over to whatever the majority side is. So understanding the history that groups have within your particular field and recognizing that, hey, for the sake of making sure that we are approaching this from a matter of justice, it should be the invested interest of an institution to try to do better by the groups that have pushed people out. And this is true for any field. Like if you see a field that, for instance, like men were disproportionately barred from for X or Y reason, I think a matter of justice, if you're trying to do better by that group of people, is to find the ways that men are positioned to not go to those job fields and work to include them. An example of this is nursing. An example of this is teaching. An example of this is, and again, I'm saying teaching going outside of physical education. Like the one field that was disproportionately represented for teachers.
Yeah, I mean,
in the modern
professors though
times,
have been men for a large portion of early history, right? But then it's
absolutely, and women are still barred from these fields in terms of tenure
and things like that. It's different, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just like one field.
To speak on that a little bit, I'll land the plane. Like women still disproportionately represent K through 8. And then it starts normalizing to where they're not a super majority, they're just a majority now. And it's like, okay, how are men positioned in society where they're prepositioned to not be teachers in K through 8? And then there's a bunch, and then there's arguments of
isn't it just possible, and devil's advocate here, right? Isn't it just possible that women are more adept at teaching K through 8? And that
Can I just build off of that just very quickly?
I'm still listening. I gotta close my window. It's cold as shit in here.
Yeah, go ahead. But we got a bunch of people want in, right? Or Lactoid wants in, and I have some thoughts too. But
I just want to punctuate Joey's point.
Punctuate. Go ahead. Punctuate it.
So that teaching example, and pretty much like what you just brought up and what Joe Lewis brought up in terms of K through whatever, pretty much whatever. Elementary, high school, largely women now, and now I think what's sometimes gets spoken about is there's an issue of how men are not doing well in education, or just maybe not doing well overall in some respects. And then there's there's talking point of there's a lack of good male role models, and that might be reflected, or the lack of male teachers might be part of that, and that if there's more male teachers, especially through elementary and high school, there might be good male role models there available.
Fair enough. My, and I'll let you go after this, Lactoid. But I guess like steel manning and devil's advocating for a moment, like just through merit, if women, for whatever reason, just do it better, just do K through 8 teaching better than men, why would we sacrifice that? Why would we give our children a worse education for the sake of diversity?
That presupposes that we gave men an opportunity to prove themselves in the field.
Well,
right?
let's assume we do. Let's assume we do. But
okay.
Through the merits,
from reality,
women just do it better, right?
So because we did a bunch of means testing, we found out through means testing that in the educational field and practice, women are better than men. Is that the hypothetical we're dealing with?
In this, for these positions, yes. And we can say that it's because of generational factors. We can say that it's because of cultural preferences. All these reasons why we can say that it's the case. But it is the case. And being that it is the case, and we do value the job that they do, and we want our children to have the best education possible, why not just give it to them?
It still does not. I mean, like, I guess the best way I would answer this is that men still exist despite women being better at a thing. And men will be engaging with that institution despite the belief that women are better at a thing. And if the desire is to make sure that women are dominant in this field, then sure, bar men out of it. But if the goal is to try to make sure that we have a better representation of all different people, not just women, then you're going to have to engage in the deficiencies that made men poor teachers and educators in the first place. And that's a longer goal. It's a longer task. So like if we means tested that women were more successful or better than men educationally, and there's a bunch of data to prove that, then we should probably engage with the vulnerabilities about making men insufficient in that field and try to change it that way. Not just
like I
it.
guess my issue is like, why try to change it if it's working? If it ain't broke, like if there's
segregation
no
work.
if there's no like if there's no institutional barriers to men getting in just because they are men, but instead that they just have these standards that men, again, for a wide variety of reasons, just can't meet. Why change that if it's working? But Lactoid here is been trying to get in, and I want to give it the Lactoid.
Yeah.
And then I got some super chats to read, but
Yeah, no, I got a few things written down here that I'd like to get out, and I think it's relevant again, just because I'm trying to prove that I'm not using meritocracy to, I guess, cover for white supremacy. Joe, you were the person who said the quote that I was thinking of. You did call Asians white presenting, though, not white adjacent.
I called it a single individual white presenting.
You said
I
you as an A. I know you apologize, but that's what I was. That was a joke that I was. I know. You apologize. That was a joke I was making fun of, poking fun.
But we can recognize that joke is used to justify people calling me a black nationalist and even saying that I support ethnic states, right?
Well, I'm not calling you a black nationalist for supporting ethnic states. At least based on what I know about you, you could. But I don't know.
But you understand, like, even though that is like my push there, just to be sure I'm clear about this and let you land everything else. My push there is that has been used as a way to discredit what I say and pushing to a clip that's now 3 years old. And I would hope with the charitability that we don't do that same shit to other content creators.
Sure, but you could have
characterizing them on one representation.
Yeah. You could have corrected it that way, as opposed to, I didn't say that was fanatic, and explained it. It was a small joke, just poking fun at, hey, Asians being white presenting as opposed to, I guess, white adjacent. Although I think that in the context of the quote, they essentially meant the same thing. And the reason why I thought that was relevant is because Asians are discriminated most when it comes to these kind of hiring practices and when it comes to affirmative action, when it comes to all these. It's not white people, it's Asians by far. In fact, according to the 2019 Harvard data, yes, Black people benefited the most from affirmative action, and white people, they were hurt, but not all that much. Asian people, about with like close to half of Asians wouldn't get in, or it may have been 1/3, but still a major portion of Asians didn't get in because of affirmative action practices. And all those Asian people have different backgrounds with different unique experiences. And I think we should treat those people with a level of non-discrimination and a level of respect, because I think that respect and non-discrimination here are hand in hand. And so when we're talking about, well, we want people with different backgrounds and different experiences, I'm not sold on this idea, well, this means some kind of race-based or gender-based discrimination. I will use anti-discriminatory rhetoric and as a shield to shield people who I think are being discriminated against, which is the whole topic of this conversation. I'm very evidence-based. Sort of ironically, this is a conversation about science. I'm science-based here. I'm not convinced by people just appealing to, well, they're going to think differently. Well, they're more dynamic. It's just a different way. No, I want to see evidence. I want to see results. Show me results. And Corey, you said you had something. And obviously, I understand it's probably a long study that we can go through later. But again, all the evidence I've seen claiming that, diversity, when you prioritize diversity over merit, this leads to quote unquote better results.
I never made that claim that when you prioritize diversity over merit.
No, you did when you said like if you got 100 people with the highest IQ in a room, they might not perform as good as a diverse group of people in that room, right? So I guess I'm using IQ here as like a stand-in for merit.
Right. Okay. So that means something to me. To me, that's different.
Okay, sure. But I haven't seen evidence for either, right? And when we're talking about affirmative action, we're talking about overtly racist hiring practices, in which we're saying, or sexist hiring practices, in which we're saying, no, you're not allowed to work here, or we're going to like discount, or we're saying you're not allowed to work here, and the deciding factor was your race. That's really what it comes down to. It just seems weird to me, especially weird when we don't have hard data on the subject. The last thing I'll say is, if we're looking at like women liking OBGYNs, or I think the example that you gave, Corey, was, male nurses can do better in a bedside manner or for certain patients, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I'd want to see evidence of this. But also, are you concerned that this may in of itself perpetuate certain racist systems, right? So for example, it may be the case that like, let's say in a super racist area, that white patients might do better if they're not treated by a Black doctor because they don't trust Black people. And by not having any Black doctors, people just kind of, they're never exposed to Black people to trust them, right? Wouldn't we want to say, okay, we're not going to discriminate against Asians, for example, who are the most discriminated against. We're just going to say, look, if you can make it on the merit, and everybody in this hospital is here because of their merit, as opposed to trying to cater to specific customer wants or needs.
I'm not sure I followed your entire line of logic. So I don't want to ask you to repeat it, but I almost have no choice here. Can you just go through that one more time?
I'll just read the last part. So male nurses, maybe it's like better. I guess my question is, why would it be better in absence some kind of empirical evidence? And what if it's the case that when you have certain minorities that are discriminated against for the same logic, right, like Asians, could this lead to more racism against Asians, for example?
Well, the only thing that I said when it comes to male nurses is that it could be better. Like, I'm okay. That's why I'm all about experimentation. Of like, to me, it's an open question. I don't know what the nursing field looks like if there's now 30% there's now 30% representation among men. Now, if we run that experiment and it turns out that it's overall bad outcomes, of like patient outcomes are worse, and that all my perceived good of like, now maybe we can better restrain patients. We don't have to rely on like whatever security down the hall. If that all turns out to be like not founded, then I'm okay with like, let's like.
Well, okay. Here's a way of better phrasing. Here's a better way of phrasing my prior question. What if it turns out that it's actually a good thing when it's all women, all white women specifically? Are you okay then saying no Blacks need apply? Black people need not apply. Asians need not apply.
Well, yeah, that's why I brought it back to like, it depends what you mean by all good. I don't know what you mean by all good. And I would pose the hypothetical to you of like, let's say your institution, or let's say in your future law firm that you run, and whatever, it's all clones of you, or close to you. Okay, it's all.
We can only handle one lactoid. First of all, one lactoid is more than enough. Any more than one lactoid is just too much. But go on.
And then you're evaluating two applicants. Okay, it's another you. Well, it's both of them are you, but one's just a different. On paper they appear the same. But then the race is different. Okay, I'm not talking about just like one, the skin color is different, but like everything that's loaded into the word of race. Of like, to you, is that just a coin flip? Okay.
Yeah, it's a coin flip. Yeah,
$5.
Unless you show me evidence to the contrary, it's just going to be a coin flip.
$5 from Turtle Emergency. Groups of people are not monoliths. Not every man, nor every woman, or every whatever phenotype are good and bad at the same things. Thank you for $5. Here's my take here. Right. I think that if you have a system based on merit, real merit, right? Not I think like things like where you set a standard and that standard is good for the field in which that standard is set. So for example, it leads to better outcomes in that field if people are able to meet these standards, and if they meet these standards, it's a good thing. Then if that tends to mean that more women or more men or more Asians or more black people meet that standard, I'm okay with that. That's okay. Like the NBA, if it just so happens, because of all these different reasons, that black people are just better and perform better on average in the NBA, so that you have an overrepresentation of black people in the NBA, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's okay. I think the same holds true for every single field that you can think of. I cannot think of a field where, again, if we have that merit, that standard, and if we hold to that standard, that it just doesn't make for better outcomes in general for society.
I don't in principle, I don't disagree. That's why, like, I call into question like the standard of like, in the article itself, they put forward the standard like, well, this is the standard now of like publications in Nature, Cell, and Science, and like I question that standard. Again, maybe hiring committees are looking at something else. There's talk of like what they call soft skills when it comes to like management and leadership. Like, what are soft skills? I think those are hard to measure. But I think increasingly more and more, as more and more data comes out, hopefully, you're going to see that these things probably matter. Like, I don't know how you measure empathy objectively now, currently. I don't know how you measure compassion also objectively. Like, these are all subjective things, but I think we recognize that they exist. They're just difficult to measure. And whether we'll actually get to perfect measurements or perfect metrics, probably not. But I think we all recognize that these are things. Then that we're not automatons.
I think a problem with what you presented, Wick, is there's reasons why, I've said this before, right? There's reasons why groups don't end up in particular fields. I'll give you an example. In Pennsylvania, white teachers make up about 96% of the teaching size. If you're tasked, as a matter of policy, to make initiatives of hiring more black teachers, what do you do?
Well, this is the, do we want that to be a task that is assigned to people? Do we want to say, you need to hire more black teachers? Or, and let me rephrase this, which I think you might even agree with this. Does the question become, how do we remove obstacles so that black teachers who meet these criteria are able to get in and not discriminated against? I think these are two separate questions, about. Right?
No, it's the same. It's baked into it.
I don't agree. I don't agree.
The problem. No, but I understand why you don't agree. But I'll explain it to you this way, right? Like, the only way that you're going to get more black people to go to Ivy League institutions is for you to have a targeted campaign so that Black people know that this is an institution that they ought to go to and that they should go to. I use college recruitment as an example because they do this directly. They will overtly target groups that they want to go to school. So they'll overtly target by zip code. They'll overtly target by the places that they congregate. They'll overtly target by the places that they go to. There's a reason why you see in majority non-white areas college recruiters for the military. Like, that's not a coincidence as to why they're there. And they're there for particular interests and particular reasons. So something that I would say, if you're looking to get more people in whatever field you're looking to be, is to be where those people are and recognize that this is an institution that they ought to be in. If you don't present that this is something that is accessible, then you're not going to be surprised that things don't change. Like Georgian Court University just transitioned from being a all-girls Catholic school to a co-ed, but they still have problems with enrollment in men. And then like you'll hear, like, is it because that men just hate women? Or do they have no idea how to approach men in traditional educational environments where they spent decades building the infrastructure of how to target women?
But we can see a tangible good and benefit. If your goal is to get more Black people to go to college, right? There's a societal good there. There's just a good overall. And I think that offering that and making sure that we remove the barriers that these communities face is a good thing. But when DEI, when the rubber meets the road, that's not how these things are implemented, nor is it how they play out.
I agree with you, because they only focus on one of the things. They use diversity as the most important thing, but then they don't even approach the diversity part correctly.
Which
because
is why
it's not diversity of just appearance. It's diversity of thought. It's diversity of background. It's diversity of experience.
I agree with that, but here's where we disagree. Because this is true, I think that trying to use DEI as a tool is bunk. It has failed us, and we need to remove it as a tool and go back and with an adjusted look at this, right? To simply a merit-based, where we remove obstacles rather than look for kind of quotas.
Do you think we engaged in the equity and inclusion parts?
No.
Well, there you go. That's the problem.
But I think that we do. By the nature of these programs, that it does not properly engage. Can I change my word to properly for you, Lactoid? Is that better?
No. I said equity. No, I think that you're wrong. Like equity, of course. I mean, equity appears to be the main focus as opposed to like inclusion.
Well, okay, so maybe here's the problem, right? Because I think I hear it. I think I hear it in a conversation. So I'm going to ask you this question very, very directly, Wick. What is justice?
In what context? Are we talking
what
legal
is justice?
System justice?
Period. I have a definition for justice that I can use in all contexts. Do you?
Okay, well, no, because I think that it's not the same in this. There is no. I think context
That's the
matters,
problem.
and I think that what is justice in a individual sense is different than what justice is in a community sense, and it's different between communities. What justice looks like, for example, on the world stage, is going to look and be different than what justice between me and Lactoid, if we had a fight, would look like.
So you can't define it.
Joel, are you just saying that justice means things?
Well, no, I want to hear his. I want to hear his
things the way they're meant to be. Because if it's that, you're just saying the word has a definition. He's not going to disagree with you on that level. I think he's trying to say that what the fine details of the application of justice from domain to domain don't spread. But of course, he would say the word has a definition.
But he can't define it, is my point.
The
problem that I come into, if you don't have a proper definition of justice when you're talking about equity, if equity is justice and you can't define justice, then you have no idea what equity is. You know what I'm saying?
Well, is equity
because
justice?
the first thing,
You've skipped over. Yeah, talk to Wick on this. He doesn't think that equity and justice are the same thing.
So equity and justice are not compatible with each other, Wick.
Well,
it's not that they're
I want to
compatible.
know
He's
what
saying that
you
they're
when you
not-
say. Hold on, Tuna.
They're not
Hold on.
synonyms,
Sorry,
right?
Tuna, calm down.
Represent
Right?
yourself. Yeah, represent
Yes.
yourself.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I need to know what you mean by justice to answer that
Sure.
question.
When I talk about justice,
Please.
I define justice as a describer. It describes the collaborative conditions of a community.
Okay, you are going to have to. Maybe I'm dumb. Okay, because
More
I don't know
details.
what that means.
Sure. So freedom and justice for me are interlinked with each other. I define freedom as one's ability to self-determine themselves and collaborate with their community and their institutions. The only way you can have freedom is through justice. Justice is just a way of describing the conditions of collaboration. And for somebody to be free, they're able to make decisions, make choices, and engage in the institutions and themselves in a collaborative manner. You can be free without collaborating with anybody around you. I don't consider that freedom. Because for me, freedom describes not only your ability to make choices for yourself and to be autonomous for yourself, but also to make those choices relative to your community and your institutions. So when I talk about justice and why equity requires justice, we're just describing, in terms of the DEI perspective, are these people in this environment able to freely collaborate with each other? And that describes what justice is. Injustice comes from that lack of collaboration within your community institutions.
Maybe this is just a definitional thing, because how I understood equity, right?
Sure.
Is what I understand equity to be is it's different from equality in a fundamental way. It's bringing the people who have less up, right, and the people who have more kind of down, right, to kind of to make it equitable, right? Whereas equality would be an example of that would be like whether you're rich or poor, young or old, black or white, if you commit this crime, you will be punished in this way, regardless of circumstances. That would be an equal thing. Whereas an equitable thing would be like, we take into account the circumstances or surrounding your background when we mete out justice or we mete out punishment for this crime that's committed, right? Would that be a good...
The reason why I asked you about justice is because it exposes why we disagree on DEI altogether. Because if I'm defining justice, and I consider justice an important portion of equity, I consider equity to be justice. They're interchangeable with each other. They're describing the collaborative conditions of a community. So in an environment of scientists, if they cannot collaborate freely amongst each other and being able to make autonomous decisions for themselves in collaboration with the community and institutions, then that's obviously a bad thing and not equitable.
But how does...
So when I'm looking at the idea of like, okay, has DEI been actualized? I would argue no, because there hasn't been an actual dedicated approach to justice.
Even in that definition, though, I would say that diversity of whether there be a lot of men or a lot of women or an equal amount of men and women does not prohibit or enhance their ability to collaborate with each other. I think that it is a non-starter.
You'd have to
check, Joe?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So one of the main reasons that free association isn't the model that science and medicine operate on is because of the public funding model, right? It's because people aren't able to choose where their taxes go, choose what their government funds directly. So it's not free. It's already not a free association to begin with because the funding is not coming in with free association. Why would you say that free association for the scientists inside of a plane is already not?
That's not what I said, Tuna.
No,
you gotta follow.
I'm okay. I'm
gotta follow better.
A question then.
Then great. Go for it.
Why does the collaboration matter at that layer when it's already been corrupted at the point of the funding?
Justice is describing the collaborative conditions of a community. Injustice comes when that collaboration does not exist, or that collaboration is infringed upon. You can be self-autonomous, you can self-determine yourself, but self-determination is not without guardrails. It's in the word itself.
I'm saying that before you even get to the point where people are collaborating and people are having rules put upon them that change the way they collaborate, the only reason that they are even to begin to collaborate is because of money being sent to them from people who are putting expectations on them, who are putting rules and regulations, conditions on that funding. So like when that funding is conditional, there's no
how
such
do people
thing
collaborate?
as free association in that model.
But again, it's not like you're saying free association when I clearly said that freedom is individuals' ability to self-determine themselves and collaborate with their community and institutions.
Yes, and if you remove...
So my definition includes what you are describing. Yep. You're describing guardrails, and the guardrails that I'm hearing from you is the funding. With the guardrails of funding existing, that does not inhibit collaboration, that does not inhibit self-determination. It is saying you have to make decisions and action and choices within these guardrails for yourself and other people. So there are situations.
Let me bring it back. Let me bring it back.
Because self-determination is not free. Like what you're describing is if you have complete and total freedom that's without collaboration. So if you only focus on yourself and make choices for yourself, that is not freedom.
You're doing a difference of comparison here. I'm not
How's that
talking
not
about
freedom?
the difference between an individual and a group that is working with funding and association. I'm talking about me and you right now talking. We're doing this on the conditions of Wick's platform, and he sets the expectations there. And if I were to break a condition for Wick, he would kick me out. Same thing with you. That is the condition under this. But if me and you were just in a room together, having the same damn conversation, that condition is removed. I'm saying that is a more freely associative model.
The condition is not
Wick
removed.
is always watching. Wick
the condition is
always
not
remove you from the conversation.
The only reason is removed. The condition that defines that engagement.
Yes, and in those conditions, I might have different rails of what I consider my parameters. You'll have different parameters. And then we have to say, hey, even when we're in a private one-on-one conversation, there's certain places where we can go, there's certain places where we cannot go. So for example, I can easily say something that might offend you. I might even say something that you consider disrespectful. You set those guardrails for yourself. But if I know those guardrails exist for you, I know, okay, this is a portion of our private interaction. Even though this is a private interaction, I cannot go. And if I go to that, then we're no longer collaborating collectively.
Okay. I'm throwing a flag on the play because I want to because we don't have much time, right? And I want to bring this back to the point of the conversation. The reason we're talking here today, in this context, right, of justice, is it justice that men are being underrepresented when it comes to receiving job interview applications, job interview opportunities, job offerings in these job interviews? Is that justice? Because it does seem that they are being underrepresented. As according to Nature magazine, it's because women are just better at it. But is that the case? Or are there systemic institutional barriers that are keeping men who would otherwise get the job from getting the job? That's the question. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're discussing. In these last few minutes of the discussion, I want to focus on that. We're going to go to Tuna because he hasn't been here for that. I want to hear your thoughts, and then we'll open it up.
Yeah, for sure. There is at least evidence that we've gone too far in pushing funding and pushing people into one job or another. I would like to see more focus on that funding with people who are younger, people that aren't in college, so that we can start building aptitudes. Then meritocratic systems at the collegiate level work better. There's been a little bit done in terms of regionality, but I would like to see that, because I think that college is supposed to be a filter. It is supposed to tell you whether or not you have the aptitude necessary. And if we push our finger on the college scale too much, we make it so that the filter is the job itself. When it comes to stuff like medicine, I understand why, and I think everybody understands why we don't want that to be the filter. People can die, people get into a liability situation. So yeah, I think if we are in a position where people who are qualified are not getting job offerings, they need to drive to another city or even leave their state in order to get a job for something that has it's one of the most obvious jobs that we need more people to go into, medicine, then that's a problem. Does that mean take funding away from people? No, I think it just means push it to different places. Make it so that instead of doing this whole like pushing women into college or pushing them to stick through with college, just pushing more younger people to be apt to have the aptitude and to recognize and identify with the aptitude they have before getting to college. Because a lot of guys, the reason that they're not sticking with college has very little to do with feeling like they're not smart enough. It's that when they get in, they have better financial opportunities from the get-go in labor and in tech that they could just go into earlier, and they're convinced before they even pick their college to go into a different field than medicine.
Wait, do you mean like immediate financial incentive? Because I think the data are pretty clear. Long-term financial outcomes are just better with a college education.
Yes, immediate. I'm saying that if you go to, so if you go, you should be able to, at least during junior high, at least maybe late elementary, start going through specialization. I think we've gotten to the point where like you can do electives in high school. You should be able to have the type of directional priming for something like medicine that early, because that's when people start to show aptitude to that degree of specialization. And if you are able to prove it, and if we start if we start scouting for people at that point, as opposed to the first year of college or the last 2 years of high school, we're going to be able to know who we can give that immediate, during college, financial benefit to, so that men could actually want to go into that field.
So are you trying to say that the problem is the lack of particularness that parents give to their children? Is that the point you're trying to make?
It's not just parents, although I would say parents can make up for it. Obviously, we know the Asian parent thing, and when it comes to the filter of moving to America, our brain drain, we should be able to brain drain out of the slums. We should brain drain the ghetto, of course, because that's how you get money back into the ghetto. People go back and they spend the money that they
No, they
earned in
don't.
college.
No, they don't.
You don't think that people take care of their parents?
No, they tend to move to like wealthier neighborhoods and bring their parents over there. That's what happens.
That's also not true, but okay. I think something that you were knocking at has nothing to do with the question that Wick proposed, but I absolutely agree, is that as a culture, we don't believe in particularness. We don't invest in particularness of education. We don't even invest in the particularness of children. Like, so I think it's fair to say that, just be particular with how you raise your children. Be particular in what they want to be. So, and it's your job as a parent to carve that path. You can absolutely carve the path to make sure that your child ends up being a lawyer, and you can start that at 2 years old. The only reason why I was in music and why I actually enjoyed music and enjoyed saxophone is because that's all my mom played every day in the house. That's all she played. She only played jazz, in particular instrumental jazz. So the artists and people that I was exposed to that I liked was directly connected to the fact that my mother played jazz. So there's even songs that I run into that I didn't even know existed, but that was the particularness. Like we had to start being pro-grooming in the society insofar as it's absolutely justifiable to groom people to particularness. And if you really are uncomfortable with that idea, we already do that in high school. We already groom people to be particular and be particular in the field that they want to do. But we just choose, as to your point, we just decide to do it at junior year of high school, senior year of high school, when in reality, you should be thinking about the particularness of what you want to do as early as 3. But The problem is that it doesn't matter how particular you are with your child's education. There's still going to be barriers in those fields. Like you can particularize your woman, you can particularize your daughter to be an astronaut. Guess what? She's probably not going to be an astronaut. Like there's just a bunch of barriers that exist within that field that pre-exist your desire to be particular on that. And those are the barriers that you have to get rid of.
Joe, I think that you're getting, like, we can move past this point and look at more, but like, I'm surprised you, of all people, aren't going to say that it should be the state's responsibility in addition. Don't you think
I want to abolish the state. I want to abolish the state. I want to abolish the state. I am not a statist. Like,
I don't think
by any stretch of the imagination.
Like, do you not think a community? Do you not think that something beyond a parent? Do you not think that parents fail because a lot of parents are retarded? Like, your parents are not going to be able to quote unquote particularize their child. There's a reason why some people particularize their child and some don't.
They can. They absolutely can. You can absolutely particularize your child into a field without having exposure to that particular field. Like,
yeah, like huffing dust or something. Like,
no,
we need somebody other than the parent.
Of course, but you particularize them into going into those things. I could you could be my child and I could make you go to soccer practice every single day until you're 18. And guess what? You're probably going to be like, maybe I do like soccer. Maybe I do like this and that. Like, that's what I'm talking about in terms of particularity. I will agree with you that not every single parent has the capacity and access to create particularity in their child because they have a bunch of different backgrounds of that. But the particularity that they tend to produce is a particularity that they have already. Well, my broader argument would be we don't actually have a culture of particularness. So we appeal to universality, and universality is what makes you more advertisable, makes you more marketable, where I think that's bullshit. Where, like, one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of scientists is that, like, parents fail their children because they don't have the education needed to ensure that their child succeeds. Like, parents aren't inherently good or bad. It's just a matter of how that works for them, When
you say we, do you just mean non-Asian, non-Jews?
What do you mean non-Asian, non-Jews?
Like, American culture has ethnicities and subcultures which are very particular with their children.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Cool. I just want to know
particularity. But I'm talking about particularity as I don't know what you mean by when you say that, and it comes off really racist. But I want to give you the benefit of the doubt here to explain what you mean by that.
Do you not? Okay. There are communities which are very particular about who you marry, what job you go into, and it's primarily Asians and Jews in America.
Would you say that is broadly, so are you casting that to a particular subset of these groups or the entire group by and large? Because again, like, black people tend to marry black people, white people tend to marry white people, Asians tend to marry Asians. Like, so I don't know what you're saying here.
No, I'm saying that not just your mom, not just slight social pressure. I'm saying you will be disowned. You will not be invited to your own family gatherings. Mom will not pick up the phone. I'm talking about like a much harsher than just like, oh, well, all my dudes are going to be fucking with me if I'm just like plowing snow all the time. No, I'm saying like some people have a heavier hand in the matter when it comes to the parent-child interaction. They say directly, this is what you are going to go into. This is what our family does. These are what connections we have. I am going to have dinner with you and my brother, and he's going to teach you what the path towards being a doctor is. That's the kind of support that you get out of a lot of foreign cultures and a couple of American cultures. But by and large, American cultures this is divided on the ethnic line. It's not because of like the skin tone. Yeah, there are probably some Asian cultures, like it's, Asia's quite large, but like when we're talking about the Asian cultures that import into America, they are particular.
We predetermine. So hold on. Let's make something really, really clear. First off, we definitely particularized what ethnic groups can even immigrate into the country in the first place. So let's make let's make sure that history is present. Let's also make sure the history is present that those particular groups of people, whether it be Black, Asian, Jewish, Hispanic, what have you, were only prepositioned to be in certain fields because of their position in the institutions themselves, which led them going into those those fields in the first place. If you have a society,
It's not true with Asians at all.
It's not true with Asians at all.
No, not at all.
But we did not position Asian Americans to be prepositioned to
them on
certain
the
jobs.
railroad.
Yeah, we put them in the railroads and in camps during World War II, but we didn't put them Asians were not dominating the institutions. Like they came from a culture which
I'm just supposed to act like the Asian Exclusion Act Chinese Exclusion Act didn't exist?
No,
is that what we're trying to do?
Yeah, it
No,
did.
we're
We
saying-
excluded them from you can't argue 2 points, like both sides of this. Like the country excluded them from the country. The U.S.
To
did.
say that.
Hold on, wait.
But
This is
racism, but go for it. Okay?
No. Asian Americans were not like a substantial part of like our institutions or institutional power in America until relatively recently, right? And
recently, there's still not.
relatively. No, I mean, they still are not. Asians outperform white people on like most socioeconomic metrics.
But what Asians are we talking about when we talk about those socioeconomic metrics? Because Asia is not just Korea, China, and Japan.
I know.
Diaspora of people.
I understand. Just
and
like white people also are diaspora.
If you disaggregate the data, if you're being honest, the disparities still exist within there. Hierarchy still exists within those communities, even in the context of where they're from.
So I can give you. So there's also just diaspora between different white people. Germans are not the same,
and
Swedes,
are those diasporas of white people having disparities that the United States government has perpetuated?
Yes, different community. Yes, different. Well,
so fabricated.
The United States government is perpetuated. I don't know about that. I do know that like different diasporas of white people have different outcomes. Of course, that's true.
Such as
what Tuna?
What?
Because
it's just words at that point.
Socioeconomic status. But I'm trying to get to the point here, which is that what Tuna's saying is that Asian Americans, like as we understand Asian Americans, the majority of them, like as a demographic in America, tend to outperform white people, and that's not because of some kind of institutional advantage that they had. It's because, by and large, when you look at people coming from Japan and China, they come from a culture which the family prioritizes success and will punish you and exclude you socially if you don't achieve success. This is one of the reasons why Mormons are also like particularly successful in certain regards. It's because the family unit will like exclude you and shun you if you don't fulfill their expectations. I guess, Tuna's, your argument here is just like the culture and the groups of which you're a part of and the pressure that they put on you to accomplish certain things can be used as an explanation here as to differing success rates, as opposed to, the institutions are captured and the institutions are just racist, et cetera.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that a lot of this happens before you get into those institutions. It has to do with the priming. You can call it the grooming, Joe. That's such a crazy word. But it has to do... I know. It's just like when other words are available, it was just so funny to just have to sit through you say it like 6 times. It's just the space that we're in. But it's like, it's one of those things. It is about the cultural explanations. It is about the grit. It is about the stories that are told. And it is, you can say we have a very individual culture, but a lot of us don't. And the people who are doing the particularity, they're doing it because it was done with them. So if we just leave it to parents, it's going to look like it is now, but more extreme, generation after generation after generation. We need to have some kind of equalizer, or else, like we already know, and this might happen with history, because we know we have a very good import of hardworking, industrious, and very strict social and familial standards of Nigeria. Nigeria is sending a ton of people that are doing into medicine. And that's one of those things that over time might shift the demographic information. And then maybe people will be like, oh, African origin people are doing so much better and they're overrepresented. And then we'll be able the conversation, well, it's only Nigerians, or instead of it being like, oh, well, that's only Indians and Japanese and Chinese and Korean. But what about people who are from Thailand or something? Like, we know what we mean when we say there are certain cultures that are very, very strict. And we can learn from those cultures when it means it's okay to stay with your parents. You're not kicked out when you're 18, not kicked out when you're 21, so long as you're working and you're working a job, and they're very, very supportive throughout that entire process. That is something we can import.
Well, support as long as you're aligned with the family, what they want.
Okay.
So, yeah, but that's also like a family.
So let me ask you.
Economic unit.
I do want to. I do want to just before anyone responds. Before anyone responds, I want to just reiterate, we have a very limited time here. So,
Okay.
And you did ask a question that I did want to answer.
Move it forward.
So just to
Go
nip this
ahead.
in the butt right now. So the highest group of educational attainment for Black Americans tends to be, more often than not, African immigrants. So if American descendant of slaves and American-born Black Americans just adopted the cultural expectations, the cultural traits, and the cultural expressions of their African immigrant counterparts, they would have better outcomes?
If you did it completely neutrally, it would probably be a net positive. Yeah.
What does neutral look like?
I'm saying just adopt every single aspect. Yeah, then it would. The problem is when we're talking about this, most people are saying, oh, well, I'm going to look back then and I'm going to import some of those things and ignore some other ones, and also include some American ones, include some others. And then what you get is a sort of skewed sample. But if you're going to say, well, my son, homosexual, no, that's not one of the ones that's helping. That's not helping. But my son works hard, has a job, and doesn't date until he has a financial stability, that one would definitely help.
So the thing that confuses me with this, and then we can move on from it, is that it rubs me the wrong way. Because while it's true, sure, on average, some Asian American groups have higher educational attainment and income achievement. There's some cases that they do outperform white Americans. But it seems like the only way the argument works is to crush the entire diaspora to a very particular subset and then use that as the overall aggregate. Because I would never say that African immigrants aren't experiencing challenges in the United States that's unique to them, and we ought to ignore it. We have to ignore their disparities because they have good educational outcomes. It seems like there's a idea of what we consider a better culture, and then we are just looking to these groups that seem to emulate these things that we believe to be better without it really engaging with everything else.
I'm not saying that because people have money, you don't have to have the police protect them or something. It's just such a weird. I
don't mention money though.
My dog is begging
Your dog is
for her walk, so we're going to have to.
Please, yeah, we can. We
this,
can talk about it more, Joe.
And we
later.
will.
Sure.
Yeah, you guys can talk all night if you'd like. Gang, this has been an interesting show. We've talked a lot. I had my thoughts on the Asmongold apology. If you missed that, I suggest you go back and watch that. I thought it was a great piece. Check that out. This discussion has been great. I appreciate everyone for coming in, jumping in, talking, and I'm going to give each of them a chance to have some closing thoughts and to put a pin in what they think. Gang, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, I got to check. We're going to be talking about bipartisanship. Is it something we should be trying for? Recently, Kamala said that she, if she was elected, would have a Republican in her cabinet. Is that a good example of bipartisanship? Is that something
diversity
that we want?
Inclusion,
right?
So DEI picks sounds like.
Well, I mean, like, is that good or not? Well, when it comes to politics, we're going to find out. And tomorrow we're going to be joined by a whole host of people. It should be fun. Let's give it first to Lactoid, and then we'll let Tuna lead us out at the end. Lactoid, sure. Joe, Corey, Tuna.
Yeah,
Lactoid,
somebody, and it was NoCal Mike, I get along with him, so I'm not talking too much shit. But NoCal Mike said something before, which was essentially, Lactoid is against DEI, but he hasn't spoke about the fact that you don't have to be against DEI, assuming that they're all qualified. Something along those lines, paraphrased. But I think there's this problem when we think about this, that qualified seems to be this line that we draw, and everybody under it is not okay for the job, and everybody above it is okay for the job. And that's just not how it works, right? There is no such thing as qualified. There is more qualified and less qualified. It is a spectrum. There is always somebody who is better than you and worse than you at any particular task or any particular thing. And so when we're having positions say, okay, we're going to set some arbitrary line of qualified, and we're going to set it, perhaps low. And then we're going to, as long as you're qualified, now we're going to introduce the racial discrimination and everything's all dandy. What the effect of that is identical to just explicit racial discrimination without any kind of idea of qualified or not, because ideally the candidates that come in that are the most qualified should be the ones that are getting the positions. So the idea that, you have Nature magazine, somebody in there, Lynn or Yvette, saying that, no, it's a good thing. We're seeing women outperform men. This is a good thing. I think that this highlights what is the common trend, which is that, it's equality when I get something, and it's bigotry when you get something. It's the ultimate in self-interested thinking, because I think ultimately these actors are self-interested, and really, like, all these ideas of equality are not particularly important to them. They're just interest groups that are just trying to further the interests of whatever group that they happen to be a part of. So I'm opposed to all of it, and I think it's a bad idea. If you like what I had to say, you can find me at LacTwit TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming in with the takes you had, and thank you. Check them out, gang, if you'd like. Joe Lewis, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so like just a little bit of a cleanup. So a lot of what I believe about justice and freedom comes from Hegel, particularly philosophy of right. That's a text of his that deeply influenced. There's a bunch of others, but what I described, Hegel, there's just a crazy word that he describes it as, but basically he saw justice as something embedded within ethical life, and essentially individuals are free through participation in social institutions. Examples he give is the idea of like the state, the family, and others. And that's basically where I get my perspective on rights and justice. Like, basically, I won't say I'm a Hegelian or whatever they call themselves, but I'm definitely deeply influenced by them. A concern that I have in conversation is that people don't really read a lot of philosophy, and they just act like they do. And then when they're asked a particular question about a thing, they get really surprised when somebody who reads articulates how they feel about it in agreement with that. And that was kind of where I felt the conversation about justice and freedom came about. Because basically, like, if you want to know my perspective on justice, just read Hegel, Philosophy of Right. And that gets like maybe 40% there of where I feel. That being said, I'm already a partner Twitch streamer. I stream when I can. So I show up on Wix when I can and argue in his Discord. So that's kind of my purpose, my core function. But yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can. It's Joe Lewis with 2 O's. So JOOELEWIS. Same thing on all other platforms.
Check him out, gang. Thank you for kind of jumping in. I know this wasn't planned, but you were making some comments. I was like, you know what, Joe?
I was glad to be here.
An interesting addition to the panel, and you were. I appreciate you. I appreciate your takes. Reading Hegel, though, I don't know, man. Like, that's some
He's boring. I know.
Stuff. Dense. Okay.
He's dense and boring. The two worst things you can be.
Sure. Let's pass it to Corey Campbell. What do you got with us? Go ahead.
Well, I'll try to close off briefly by attempting to quickly answer your question, where I think the overall question you pose is like, is it an injustice if, like, men are being discriminated and are actually being discriminated against? And the answer that I would give briefly is I would just say potentially. Okay, until I see more data, as in if this trend continues, like, yeah, I would be concerned. But right now, I'm not concerned, and I'll tell you why. And maybe I'm overly confident, but so I'm gonna put a link to a Substack that I wrote in your YouTube chat. Okay, I documented my experience with a company that I was hired, and the original LinkedIn posting that I applied to was there. And I'm gonna read something from the posting that's gonna make Lactoid cringe real bad. Where at the end of the LinkedIn posting, diversity is ingrained in our company DNA. Currently, 80% of Ellie's team identify as women and 60% as part of another minority group. We are committed to building a truly inclusive environment as an equal opportunity employer. And I think it's fair to say that, I am white presenting and I identify as male, and I got a job at this company. Now, I was fired for, as I argue in what I wrote, I was fired for being too competent, being too meritorious.
And sounds like the kind of company that would do that.
And included in what I wrote are actually audio recordings, secret audio recordings of my final meeting with them, if anyone's interested in reading.
Holy shit, is this real? Do you do secret audio? This is some spy shit, but go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
Absolutely. And I confirmed, so legally, Canada is a one-party consent state. and therefore you don't need permission. Or as long as you're part of the conversation, you can record it. And so I recorded that.
No, we're gonna have you on back again to talk about this specifically. I'm very curious. But
Be really careful about that, Corey. Just so we're clear. I mean, if you decide to
well,
do
he's
that.
in Canada, so you know.
The act of recording, listening back to it, maybe he has to be thinking about what it means.
Okay, let him finish his thing. My bad. I interrupted.
Whatever.
I interrupted, but yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, it's all there, documented, including all the emails, the LinkedIn posting, and the audio recordings from my final meeting with them. And I think my case, I'll let the audience decide, but I think my case is quite strong that I was too competent, and therefore the scientists there wanted to get rid of me. But either way, I still got a job at this company. Okay, I signed their offer letter, and therefore that's why I'm confident. And I also have another job at another biotech company. That's why, like, whatever. I'm not particularly concerned about being discriminated against as a male in science. So far, hasn't really hurt me all that much. But yeah, this has been great as always. Super grateful that you invited me on, Wick. You can find me on Twitch, CoreyCampbell84, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, Substack. It's Corey Campbell. Wick, Tuna, Lactoid, Joe. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'd be out of here, but no, gang, check them out. And yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that in detail at some point, me and you. Go ahead, Tuna Chip, close us out, send us home.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the basic point for me is that my government takes money from me to fund medicine and science, and to me, every time that I interact with a person, every time that I go to the doctor, I would prefer the best doctors to have treated them and to treat me. And that means that they should be pulling from the best of every pool possible. I don't believe in the magic touch of certain people outside of experience and knowledge, and that's what we should be vetting for. Beyond that, if we end up getting to a point where the methods that allow one group that was historically behind to get better at something brings them to a higher percentage, and we don't take that method and then put it on whoever becomes the smaller percentage afterwards, it means that we didn't believe in the methodology for increasing that percentage at all. We thought that it was a way to climb. It's sort of a ladder kicking measure. So I believe that there are financial incentives that are making it so that smart people in demographics are actually sticking with the long-term goal of medicine. I think it should be spread, but I think that it should be spread earlier. Simple as that. Anyway, you can find me here on Twitch. You can find me on YouTube. It's all fucking Tuna Chip. Easy as can be.
All fucking Tuna Chip. What a life. What a motto to live by. It's all fucking Tuna Chip, bro. That's all. No, check him out, gang. Thanks for being here. Sorry you didn't get to be on for a long time, right? But Lola's whining at me, and I must appease
Feed the dog, bro.
Just cut off her legs. No walking required.
She's been fed, but she needs a walk, or she's gonna go crazy.
She needs to shit.
Probably, and I don't want it to be in my house.
Bro.
We do this thing, right, where there's squirrels in like the woods, right, like the thing. And so when we go on a walk, I let her briefly chase those squirrels. So she goes and she runs around the tree. She barks at them. And then after about 2 minutes of that, I held up the leash and she comes back and we release her. It's really good. We're training her good. Gang, please like the stream, subscribe to the channel. We're going to end the stream. I love you all. See you guys tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Bye-bye.